In a world where fans have grown tired of the same old cookie-cutter Comic-Con formats, only one con defies the odds. Only one Comic-Con stands what fans really want. Only one Comic-Con dares calls itself terrific. That's right, this August 17th through the 19th at the all-new giant-size Mohegan Sun Expo Center in Uncasville, Connecticut comes Terrific-Con. Connecticut's Terrific Comic-Con is back with New England's largest gathering of comic book artists and writers. Plus, Terrific-Con delivers actors from your favorite TV shows and movies. And there's an all-new expanded gaming section as we give you tabletop gaming, video games, and so much more. Plus, don't forget, all kids 10 and under get in free at Terrific-Con and can be part of the all-new All Yeah Kids Comic-Con. Join us for 3 full days of Comic-Con action only in Connecticut at Terrific-Con. For more information, go to our website, www.terrificcon.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. It's time for another edition of the King's Speech. Tom King, a great Q&A. I've involved the Word Balloon Legion of Word Balloon listeners to ask some questions, and we all talk about the fallout from Batman number 50. Holy cow! From the New York Times spoiling to the amazing final page and panel that opens up a new bunch of questions. Yeah, he got jilted at the altar. Catwoman didn't make it. And obviously he's upset. But what about that group of characters that are surrounding Bane? Joker, Riddler, the Ventriloquist, Hugo Strange, Thomas Wayne, Flashpoint Batman. What the hell? Holly. Man, Skeets. Good Lord. Have I missed anybody? I don't have the picture in front of me. Fill in the rest if I did. But it's a great conversation. We talk about picking up the pieces of Batman's jilted heart, and we think about some of the clues that maybe we missed as Bane gathers this strange anti-Bat family to torture the Caped Crusader. We also talk a lot about the Wal-Mart Exclusive Superman story that he's going to be doing with Adam Kubert. Lots of details on that. The very interesting Heroes in Crisis that starts this fall with Clay Mann. Of course, Mister Miracle, which continues to be an amazing comic with Mitch Gerads. A lot of these guys also do wonderful work with Tom on the Batman books. He talks about his collaborations with his various artists, and also artist-writer Joelle Jones, who's just got its thing started with Catwoman, and how their stories dovetail. So lots of information on current, past, and future projects. We also get into just great comic book encounters he's had. We, of course, acknowledge the passing of a comic legend, the great Steve Ditko, a little more Harlan Ellison talk as well, and lots of other stuff. It's a really fun, long King's Speech with Tom King on today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Again, thank you, League, for your support. You keep the lights on here at Word Balloon with your subscriptions to Word Balloon via Patreon. Greatly appreciated. If you like what's happening at Word Balloon, the type of dialogue that I have with these very interesting creators of comics, I am very happy to keep this thing going, and it's done as well with the support of the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon. If you want to support the show and subscribe to Word Balloon, do you think it's worth the price of a comic each month? Is it worth $1 a month? You can go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad there, or go to patreon.com/wordballoon. But thank you very much for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by In Stock Trades at instocktrades.com, and we may as well just take a look at what's available under the Tom King logo at instocktrades.com. 6 years of Tom King product is available at instocktrades.com. You can get Volume 1 of The Sheriff of Babylon, Bang, 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 him and Mitch Gerads. It is 42% off, $8.69. Go back and get one of Tom's first great DC Universe successes, Omega Men, The End Is Here. Wonderful book. Again, something we talk about in the conversation. 42% off. It's just $14.49. You can get The Vision, Volume 1 or Volume 2. Man, this is such a great book. Volume 1 is called Little Worse Than Man, and it's 42% off, $10.43. Same price for Volume 2, Little Better Than Beast. And that's your full collection there, another $10.43. Lots of volumes of Grayson, Spirals, and Volume 5. Tom doing the solo writing on this wrap-up. Michael Janin among his collaborators. It collects issues 17 through 20 and annual number 3, and it is 42% off, $9.85. You can start things off with I Am Gotham, the start of his current Batman run. It is 42% off, $9.85. Just some of the great Tom King product waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Great books, great prices. Don't forget, if your orders are $50 or more, you'll receive free shipping. We'll tell you some more deals that are waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Okay, let's get things started with our wonderful conversation, a new one with Tom King, a great Q&A, and I think you're going to enjoy it. The King's Speech, the latest edition, now on Word Balloon. Tom King, welcome back to Word Balloon. I don't know why your name has been on my brain lately. I was just talking about you with somebody.
Yes, with multiple people, and you're ruining my podcasts because you're talking about me, and I dislike it. I've come on to complain and whine and tell you to shut it down.
No. We said nice things. What are you talking about?
I've been listening to the Bendis tapes, I think, since I was, in Afghanistan.
That's great, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
And yeah, they're my favorite things. I used to listen to it. Was my drive home thing when I was in CIA days. After a tough day, it was Bendis tapes on the podcast. And I tune in the latest Bendis tapes so I can hear him. I was going to talk about this summit I was at. It was going to be great. And 10 minutes in, it's Tom King this, Tom King that. And I'm no one ever wants to hear anyone talk about them ever. I don't, at least.
Oh, I always get delighted when their podcasts bring me up, whether it's positive or negative. It's really? Go on.
I just assume people are lying through their teeth, or if they're telling the truth, it's going to be awful. Those are the two options that come to. That's my neurotic head.
I understand.
At work there.
I do understand. Well, but you did, here, let's start off and say, nice going on Seth Meyers. Hey man, that's not easy. That is not easy, and you did good.
I was so excited because I come off and my wife is great job, and Clay Mann was there with me and he's great nice job, and DCPR was great job, and then I get a text from one of my best friends who's probably listening to this, and his literal text was your fake friends will tell you did great and then talk bad behind your back. Your real friends will tell you look nervous and you had some sort of chiropractic problem. I was no, everyone says I'm good. This is why I don't want to hear about myself. So I think that's what I was listening for when Bendis came on, that he'd be like, hey, you've heard of Tom King? Oh, yes, I saw him on the show. He would look nervous and he had chiropractic problems. Chiropractic, is that a word? I'm a professional writer. Did I mention that?
I think chiropractic problems would be the correct description of why you go to a chiropractor.
There you go.
Obviously.
There you go. We nailed it.
I would say so, sure. I'm going with that.
We're going with that. We should invent a superhero, the chiropractor. It sounds like a...
Let's consult Dr. Midnight. He would know.
Dr. Midnight, is Dr. Midnight still alive in the DCU? I guess I know that.
I don't know. I guess that's yet to be determined when the Justice Society finally returns.
I do miss those old days when it was whenever anyone had any doctor problem at all, it was Dr. Midnight would show up. He was the busiest doctor in the entire DCU. It'd be any problem, he was the utter specialist in all areas.
Absolutely. And Meltzer, I think, used the female Dr. Midnight in Identity Crisis.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
To find what at first was thought to be the Adams, spoilers, footprints on Sue Dibney's brain.
Spoilers. That's got to be 13 years ago or something.
I think it is like that. Yeah, I think you're right. I did podcasts with Brad and Didio about Identity Crisis because I felt that they were being unfairly maligned because they chose rape as a story plot point. And I'm like, well... that's kind of the point, is it is a horrific crime, and it is supposed to, upset you. So, and we read upsetting stories. If you didn't feel that way, then we wouldn't get things like Silence of the Lambs and other disturbing things that normally I don't like to read. Or Robert Kreis, if you will, or some of the others that are really a little too harsh.
Yeah, there are things I wouldn't, that are in there that I wouldn't personally put in a story. But I like it overall. Brad Meltzer has changed my life more than a few times. I mean, I've told the story how him on this podcast inspired me to quit the CIA. But more recently, he called me when I sort of had to make the decision of going to DC and Marvel. And I was kind of going back and forth. And he's like, you got to go to DC. And I said, why? And he's like, because of Dan DiDio. I was like, Dan DiDio? Because I didn't know Dan very well. I'd always dealt with lower editors. Now I'm close friends with him. But I was like, Dan, everyone hates Dan. He's kind of like this, they always blame me for this. He's like, no. Dan loves comics. He loves the creators of comics. He takes care of people and he keeps his word. And I was like, oh, everyone just says that about anyone. But I sort of took Brad, because Brad Meltzer, when he talks, you just believe him. He's one of those kind of guys.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. He's a good acquaintance and has done many solids for me, and he's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, and he's got a lawyer's conviction and convincing abilities, and he was 100% right. But sort of Dan has the worst, or had, not as much anymore, but he had the worst reputation of sort of being creator unfriendly and sort of getting into everyone's way and sort of hating the characters and loving sales. And the actual opposite is true in actually experiencing who he is as a character and as a person. He loves DC Comics. He loves these characters. And more importantly, he takes care of creators. He gives the older creators gigs that they would not normally get. He makes sure they get health care. He makes sure they get taken care of. I saw Len Wein in his final days. Dan was taking care of him and making sure he has steady stream. He takes care of all the old guys that you really care about. Like DiDio is behind making sure those guys can, buy food. And so he was totally right about that. And I think that's my success in DC is sort of, again, been following Meltzer's advice. So
that's cool.
Advice for life.
No, that's cool, man. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad that, beyond him taking care of you, that, like you said, he's taking care of some of the older creators and stuff. That's a very good point. Well, tell me 2 years in. Let's start with some of the essay questions first. Like, is it 2 years for Rebirth?
Yes. Cause
it does.
Batman 50. 1 and we're at 50.
Yeah, so that makes sense. All right.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm halfway through. It's going to be a 4-year run. I'm 2 years in.
Well, and again, talking to people like Brian, and also the things they've announced this year, it does sound like DC is spreading into more platforms than ever before and being more ambitious from what they publish and how they present it.
Yeah, they're doing this sort of, which I think is the right thing to do, which is this sort of it sounds horrible when you say it, but sort of a cradle to the grave strategy, where it's like, and I have children. I have three young children who aren't as young as they used to be, but they're 4, 8, and 9 now. And the idea is sort of, there are little books for kids that are drawn by Jose Garcia Lopez, and you can read those when you're little. And then when you're 4, there's books for 4-year-olds. And when you're 7, there's books for 7-year-olds. And when you're 9 and 10, and when you're 12 and 13, you start to get to the DCU, which is what I write. And then if you get to, if you're in your 20s, you want to read more mature, contained stories, then there's that stuff. And they're having a label for each sort of one. So it's the idea that sort of there's a book for everyone out there, and there's a book for every age. And I think that's the right strategy. I think that makes sense to me. Excellent. As long as because I keep getting people saying, do you want to write for young readers? Do you want to write for Black Label? And,
sure.
And because that seems like something that would appeal to me, because I love self-contained stories. I love miniseries. But to me, the best part about comics is this continuing story that it's unfolded for 80 years. And as long as that's the heart of DC, and I think it's going to remain the heart of DC, the DCU, and that story, that soap opera, that whatever you want to call it, that links Action Comics 1 to Batman 51, like I feel like contributing to that is the most important thing you can do, or at least the most fun thing you can do. So I want to keep doing that. I think that makes the stories better somehow.
Cool. All right, that's awesome. Let's talk about where we are at Batman right now. Obviously. As you say, 51 out next Wednesday. We'll drop this on a Friday before that, so people have plenty of time to get caught up, and we'll get into the photograph or the final page of 50 as well in a second. But yeah, should we start? Well, should we start? I suppose we should go chronologically. Everyone obviously had a great sympathy for you when the New York Times spoiled what we thought was, the big moment of the book. And well, hey man, nobody likes that. And I, again, this is me saying this because I said it the same thing to Bendis. I found it obviously totally unnecessary. They could have just said Batman and Catwoman at the altar. What's going to happen? Find out Wednesday. And I'm sure that would pique a lot of people's interest when you give them when you find out Rosebud's this was kind of a Rosebud's the sled, not the point of the story necessarily. And it's funny because I remember you too telling me in the last time we spoke, because I'm like, and not that I'm any fucking genius, please, but I'm like, something's got to happen. You can't come on. And that's when you said, and you've said it many times in various articles and podcasts, that it's only the halfway point. That's, you've got, this is a 100-issue story. So let's start with the New York Times thing. Obviously frustrating, or were you like, well, they don't know the secret bomb still?
So when I started in publishing, so 5-6 years ago, I did this whole CIA thing where you're supposed to be as anonymous as you are.
Okay.
And then I did a book for Simon & Schuster, and they didn't do very much promotion. The one thing they did was they hooked me up with a PR consultant who was like a psychologist woman on the phone who was going to teach me how to pitch my book.
Okay.
And
this is for Once a Crowded Sky.
It's for Once Crowded Sky back in the day, yeah. And she's like, just pitch me your book. Tell me what it's about. And I was like, well, it's sort of my attempt to bridge the gap between comics and prose as a way of sort of talking about bridging the gap between story and reality. And I don't know if it succeeds in doing that, but that's what it's trying to do. And I was completely honest in sort of my response. And I got, she's like, Tom, you sound like such a sweet guy. You're so honest. You're ambitious. But you know that there's a limit to ambition. And I was like, oh, thanks. And she goes, never fucking do that again. You love your story. Your story is a huge success. It is exactly what you wanted it to be. And everything is going great. You say that again and again. You always have confidence in what you wrote, and what happened is what you wanted to happen. I was like, yes, ma'am. So what I should say in response to your very nice question is, you know what? What happened had to have happened, and I'm so happy it all happened the way it did because lots of people read the issue, and man, I am excited to keep going forward, and I can't wait for the audience to go on this journey with me. Like, that is totally the answer I should give, but it's such not the fucking truth.
Yeah.
I was flabbergastedly, horrifiedly frustrated, and frustrated for the audience, frustrated for to have it. I don't even know where to start with, because I can't obviously comment on some things, but because some things are just too close to the bone. But the idea that a major paper would get a story or get a preview of an issue and decide to tell you the exact end of it and put it in the cover title of the thing, which they then tweet out to all their followers. And then not only did they tweet it out to all their followers, they messaged that title to everyone who subscribes to their message. So I had people calling me and be like, I was spoiled when it popped up on my iPhone. It came out as an alert. The New York Times sent an alert to some, 20 million phones. This is the end of Batman 50. And that is just, and it was a story that I knew people would be upset. I mean, I didn't want people. You never want people to be upset in your stories. It's not a comfortable feeling.
Sure.
I want to make, especially Batman. I write other stories to make people sad. I write Batman to make people happy. But to write stories, there are moments of where your characters suffer, right?
Sure,
like,
of course.
If you're watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and when the Nazis grab the Covenant, you're like, oh no, like you suffer. You're like, why did they leave Indy and the Snakes? You have frustration. I mean,
or when he thinks Marion is dead.
Yeah, he thinks Marion is. Yeah, he seems sad. Or and the idea there is, as a writer, your job at some points, not all points, but part of your job is to put your viewers or your readers or whoever inside the heads of your character, right? Like writing is an empathy machine. I'm trying to make my audience feel what my characters feel,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, of course.
So I knew my character. Knew with a degree of hope that they would feel the same frustration that Batman would feel. Batman thought he was getting married. He thought he was going to that wedding. Sorry, this is spoilers for Batman 50, which if you didn't get an alert on your phone, now I'm just as New York Times. But like he believed in his heart of hearts that he was getting married, and he didn't get married. And so the way the audience felt, that frustration, that horror, is what Batman feels. And I hate the fact that we have to sort of feel that, but that's how character growth happens, when you feel the pain of your characters.
Absolutely.
But the issue was written specifically knowing that pain was coming, so that the whole issue was a celebration of that love. If you actually read the issue, it's a celebration of their love, and it's and an emphasis on why they love each other and how they will always sort of love each other. And it's one of those things where they don't get together at the end, but you see there is hope that they possibly could get together. Like there was momentum in the issue that sort of said to you that here are two soulmates that will eventually, they can never fall apart that far because their souls are connected. Sort of, there's a string that connects them that can't be broken. And that was the point of the issue. And if you read the issue, hopefully, I mean, if you didn't get that, that's my fault, but that's what I tried to do.
Understood.
If you read a New York Times article, none of that shit's in there. None of that shit's in an alert that shows up on your phone. It's not like Batman, Catwoman don't get married, but there's still a love and there's a soul string that bonds them, and perhaps someday, like none of that. So the reaction, it was as if people got punched in the face by this, and they didn't, and it was, and then I just got, and you sound like an idiot because you should just be able to ignore it, but it's hard to ignore. I just got waves of like the worst. Because people's hearts got broken, and so they were angry. And we live in a time of such heartbreak. Like, we live in this heartbreak time,
Sure,
where it just feels like every day some new hope is destroyed. And so I gave heartbroken people another heartbreak. So they rightfully had anger, and they rightfully had these strong emotions, and they threw them as hard as they could at me. And so you just like, you turn on your phone and just like, oh my God, I am the world's worst person. You just, and 10% of it is death threats and all that stuff that you could complain about.
for real.
And I mean, I'll do some dramatic reading for you sometime. Some of my, I took photo shots of them there. Anyways, but those don't bother you that much because you're kind of like, okay, that's, it's kind of someone just jumping on board a train, or someone who's not sort of in their exact right state of mind. It's the ones where it's like, Tom, I've been reading for 49 issues and you broke my heart, and you're like, oh, I love you for reading for 49 issues. I'm so sorry. Like, you feel their pain and you just want to reach out and be like, this is a 100-issue arc. We're halfway through. Just, you're going to feel pain in the middle, but by the end, maybe you won't. That's how sort of narrative works. But it's hard. I have every sympathy for every person, and I have no sympathy for the fucking New York Times, who I love and hope they write about my comics wonderfully in the future.
Well, I got to grab the issue. Hang on one second. Shame on me. I didn't have it with me when we started this. So hold on one second, because it's several steps away. Hold on.
How dare you? Glad to vamp now. Hello out there, DC Comics fans. Thank you so much for reading my comics. Try to read more of them if you can. Am I still vamping? Should I tell a joke? Here's my... What joke should I tell? My son told this joke at his stand-up routine. What did you hear what my grandpa said before he kicked the bucket? Hey, how far can I kick this bucket? That was his opening joke at his stand-up routine. He's 9.
I like it. It's like Tom's leaving me, obviously, a secret message that I'm going to get now that I've come back because I heard you talking.
Little did you know.
Fraction did that to me once, which was very funny. on an early Work One episode, he kept talking, so it's good. Like I said, shame on me. I also wanted to turn off my dryer. If people heard my dryer in the background, I do apologize.
Let me do a dramatic reading of these tweets.
Sure.
Tom King TK. My name and my initials. If you don't follow me on Twitter, hope you'll get fired for that, stupid asshole. Have no idea who you really are, gay or straight, but hope karma will get you as soon as possible for breaking the fans' hearts, and you'll get divorced with your beloved. Or suicide yourself. That'll be a pretty nice move.
Wow.
Tom King, you suck, and wish you dead. Batman and Catwoman should have gotten married, you moron. And it was days of this, and I got 3 kids.
Oh, you hugged him hard.
Yeah, so it was...
Jeez, man.
How dare you exploit Selena and Bruce's wedding like that, only to cancel it, you fucking rats. We are fucking coming for your demented head. Just wait for it, you son of a bitch. I don't know. I saved them just because they were. But those ones don't bother. Those ones, I mean, that's what it is. Whatever. People have.
No, you're.
Yeah.
Well, again.
I feel guilty just reading them.
Yeah.
Like I'm complaining. I mean, that's part of the job. I literally have the best job in the world. It's the job I've always wanted, and I get paid very well to do it. And I have absolutely nothing to complain about. That's part of the job. So. It is what happens.
Well, it's just reflective of, again, people judging a story before it's finished. And, of course, instead, thankfully, like I said, the great thing is you had that final epilogue of Holly going back to Arkham and kneeling before Bane. And we had no idea that this really was a 100-chapter story. Because, and I'm looking at that photo right now, or the final panel.
Yes.
And so we've got Riddler and Joker standing next to each other, the Psycho Pirate right there. Bane on a throne of skulls, which you always got to appreciate the throne of skulls.
in the basement of Arkham.
Absolutely. Gotham Girl. The ventriloquist. Flashpoint Batman? Thomas Wayne as Batman? Is that definite, or is that speculation?
No, that's Thomas Wayne as Batman. That's Flashpoint Batman.
And Hugo Strange. Who's always got, you're not. It's not surprising to see Hugo
and Skeets
and Skeets on the floor. Shame on me. Yes,
or Skeets.
Yes, and no, that's great. That's very exciting because all of a sudden, all of these former arcs that have been leading up to the wedding take another greater importance. And I know, I think it was Alex Chung. I want to look on Twitter and make sure that I've got the right person that's asking. Obviously, should we go back and reread, some of these arcs? Are there hidden moments that if we look, I noticed one in the final chapter of the Booster Gold story when Skeets kind of reboots, and there's kind of a stuttering bee happening there.
Yes, I mean this has been the plan since issue 1, that this was sort of all one. I mean the whole thing. I write miniseries, right? I write 12-issue miniseries is my favorite thing. So when I started Batman, I was like, what if I look at this instead of as 100 issues where sort of one thing follows another, as a 12-issue miniseries that sort of. So this is all sort of one story, and 50 was the big reveal who the bad guy is, the big bad behind the whole thing, and it's Bane.
Right.
And so we've been sort of leading up to that this is a Bane versus Batman story for 100 issues. That's going to be sort of the driving theme of the. There are 2 driving themes. I'm such a simple writer. I only write sort of little simple things, and there are 2 driving themes of the whole thing, and that's Catwoman and Batman and their love, and Bane and Batman and their hate. It's contrasting those 2 just simple concepts. It's the driving engine of all 100 issues, from issue 1 to issue 103, which is where I'm going to end the whole series.
Very cool.
So and all those, and you'll see how and there's a lot of the questions that have been asking are sort of part. And people have been asking the right questions. They're like, who created the Gothams? How did they get their powers? That's a great question. That's part of the Bane mystery. Why did Bane got beat so easy? He got beaten by a headbutt. That's how. And people go like, why? That's such an easy way to get beaten. Why did Bane get beaten? I was like, that's a good question. That was on purpose. That's part of this Bane mystery. All of that plays in, and the Thomas Wayne stuff is so cool. And it's all coming together.
Certainly, you question his motivation. Skeets has been evil before. Everyone, and of course, the mystery behind Gotham Girl. And you've got to wonder exactly when did that story actually start. Obviously, there's a story before I Am Gotham that is yet to be told. That's a supposition on my part.
Right. Yeah, how she got her powers, and then I gave people hints in issue 5, I think, of Batman. There's sort of a flash forward, just happens in the captions, and that's part of the plan. If people want to look at that, go back and look. And but the one I thought was going to give it away was I did this arc where Joker sort of knows about the wedding and tries to interrupt it, and you see
the
sort
best
of
man.
Yeah, and he gives the reason to Catwoman of why she eventually sort of stops doing it. This idea that that if Batman is happy, if he's content, he can't be Batman.
Sure.
And that comes from Joker, and people are like, well, who told Joker that they were getting married? And I was like, how do I? And it was in the free issue. If you look back in the DC Nation number 0,
yes.
Joker says a banana told me. So that's Bane, a banana. I thought it was it's so obvious people were going to know, but nobody noticed.
Oh, that's really interesting, and perhaps answers Lord Retail's question. If you can say of issues 1 through 49 of Batman, what storyline holds the most overlooked detail? Which arc to date has the thing that Tom is surprised no one ever mentions?
Yeah, I like the banana one. I think the idea that Bane was beaten with the headbutt. There have been some big sort of moments, that have hinted at things.
Well, again, I guess we're going to have to, everyone's going to have to pull back their 49 issues or several trades and kind of retrace the steps and see if we can find other things. Like I said, that was my telling thing that I'm sure will be further expanded is Skeet's rebooting and stuttering.
The idea from the beginning is how do you break Batman, right? That was Bane's sort of quest, and he's been on this quest since 1996 or whatever it was. And I love those original Chuck Dixon Bane issues are so good.
Yeah.
And I credit to Andy Corey, an editor of mine, who said, go back and read those. They're brilliant. And he was 100% right. And how do you break Batman? Breaking him physically never works. He gets broken physically 1,000 times. Even killing a Robin, all his Robins have died, or it's like how, how as a villain, how do you break this person? And this idea that the way to break him is to make him happy, to do what I've been talking about this whole time, which was what happens if Batman gets happiness, and then to sort of yank that away from him. And it was like, how do you break Batman? You break his heart was the answer that Bane came up with. And so the bat is broken is sort of his last line. When Batman's standing there and Catwoman doesn't show up, the bat is broken. And can Batman repair himself, and can he repair himself in time to fight Bane? And to sort of maybe even try to repair his relationship with Catwoman. That's what the next 50 issues are about.
Excellent. And I guess we're going to learn more of the Psycho Pirate and certainly Thomas Wayne's motivations, the ventriloquist motivations, I'm assuming, as well.
Oh, yeah. All those people play a role. I mean, there's a whole big everything planned, As we get up to 75, it's going to be a big thing, and then we get to 100, it's going to be a big thing. So, yeah, everyone's motivations and how they sort of come together and form this sort of evil version of the Bat family will be working together. Yeah. So it's going to be – I wish I could talk about it all, but I like it. It's super cool.
No, that's great. Hey, man, and again, great job on the first 50 issues. Again, I think you fooled us into thinking they were kind of separate stories. Although, again, the War of Jokes and Riddles is explained how Bruce reached a point where he could trust Selina to express this great regret of this case and everything. And I thought that was a good, another faction leading into their level of intimacy and trust of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do that. Sometimes it can be so frustrating. Like I did this Booster Gold arc, which was all about sort of Booster it was a sort of a warped version of It's a Wonderful Life, where Booster tries to It's a Wonderful Life as a verb. It's a Wonderful Life. Batman be like, guess what? Your life is actually pretty good. If it went the other way, it'd be much worse. And then Batman's like, but I like the worst version better.
Sure.
That was my pitch. I was like, what if Jimmy Stewart loves Pottersville? He's like, man, you can drink at the bar here. It's awesome. I don't have to be married to that stupid librarian. It's the best.
And I love how crazy Booster looked at the end, too. And also, well, I mean, both how shaggy he was, and then truly, you give him that great Lady Macbeth moment where he can't get the blood out of his costume.
Yeah, well, it was one of those good things where two things collided at once, because the point of that arc was, of course, now people can see, hopefully in retrospect, that we were showing that if Bruce were made happy, if there was something he cared about more than he cared about the war on crime, he couldn't be Batman. Which I know sounds ridiculous, like, oh, someone can't be happy and be Batman. But you and I are normal people who try to do good in life, but we don't go out in a costume and fight people because we can't risk our lives in that way, you know? Like, we don't... Sure. There's something about Batman that he is driven in a way that we're not driven, where to him there's nothing comes above the mission. And then Catwoman says that she that's her development, that she sort of, in the beginning, she thinks she'll be still beneath the mission. She says that in the Desert arc. And the idea of Bruce, and it's in the I Am Suicide arc, he says this, like, I'm dead, I don't have a life, I have no will, the only thing I care about is my war on crime and fulfilling that vow when I was 12 years old, and that's why I'm Batman. Nothing comes above that. And the idea of why being happy would interfere with that is because the idea of, okay, if I put something above that, if my love for Catwoman is more than that, then I can't go out and sort of make that sacrifice every night. Just like you and I decide not to go out and risk our lives and jump off of buildings because we have things we love in our lives, like our wife and my kids. You know? Sure. So I think it's the most human decision we make not to be. And it comes from a personal place of sort of why I left CIA, where sort of like I didn't want to live a life of danger because I had a wife and kids. You know, I'm not a subtle writer. I just write about myself. So that was the idea. So that was the idea behind that booster arc. But everyone's like, what the fuck is this booster arc doing in the middle of this wedding? Like we're heading up to this wedding. I was like, no, but I thought I was spelling it out way too much. I was like, everyone's going to see it. I'm putting it right there that if Batman's happy, he can't be Batman. They'll see it, but nobody saw it. So it's stuff like that I hope people go back and see. That sort of this is the big plan.
Very cool. Yeah, man. No, I again, like you said, and I think something Rucka has said as well. Batman does this every night, knowing that he'll fail. Because there's always going to be some crime that he's not going to be able to stop that night.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I'm thinking about it, but I know some Batman writers who are focusing on that now in some upcoming projects. That exact thing, and it's going to be cool. But yeah, I think, I mean, the idea of it's this sort of Kierkegaardian. Sorry, that sounds so fucking pretentious, but. I mean, the idea that if you have a goal, and I sincerely believe it, and you're willing to sacrifice everything you want to achieve that goal, then almost any goal can be achieved. But those sacrifices cost you, you know. And Batman, his one goal, and he's willing to make sacrifices to his body and to his family and to everything to achieve that goal, is this war on crime. And it's almost an existential dilemma where his life is not as important as that war. No one's life is as important as that war, as that vow. And if you take that away from him and say that's not your ultimate goal, then what is Batman's power? What is his power? What makes him able to stand next to Superman and Wonder Woman, even though he has nothing except a leather costume and a batarang, is the fact that he has willpower. That's his one power, is that he has willpower. And if he doesn't have that drive, then he might not be as good at Batman. Maybe. At least, I mean, I'm not saying that's right, but I think that's the perception that Catwoman has at this point.
I'm nodding. I get it.
Sweet.
I'm also.
That was a long lecture.
No, that was good. No, that was very good. I'm also scanning questions that I'm seeing on Twitter right now. Is there some endgame he's building up to? This is Michael Kakula. Is there some endgame you're building up to with Kite Man, or was his role in War of Jokes the zenith of Kite Manery?
I think I've already announced it, but if I haven't, so I'm doing 103 issues because I wanted to do a 100-issue run, and stupid Steve Orlando, that slacker, wrote 2 of my issues for the Monsters arc, and Josh Williamson, that other slacker, wrote 1 of my issues for Button, and I co-wrote them, so I was I co-plotted them, but they did most of the work and made them good. They're very good issues. So I'm doing 103 issues just so I have 100 of my own issues. So, but the actual sort of story will end in 100, and then we'll have sort of 3 issues to do a coda. The artist have already, Mikkel is going to draw 100. He drew the Rebirth #1, so the one that came before. He drew 50, and he'll draw 100.
Cool.
So Mikkel will be with me for the whole run, because he's the best and nicest, and he's just awesome, and he makes a beautiful Batman. And then 100 to 103 will be sort of coda issues. And 103, the last issue, will be Batman and Kite Man having a beer in a bar, like that old thing Sandman issue. 100%. If I'm still alive, if I don't get hit by a car, if you blessed people keep buying my comic, thank you for keeping buying it. 103 will be the two of them just having a beer and discussing what the fuck just happened for 132.
That's awesome. That's very Elmer Fudd Batman. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, it'll be just two dudes having a beer, and I got to talk someone into drawing that because it sounds really boring.
Kevin McGuire.
Kevin McGuire. No, it's got to be one of the sort of
one of your bad people.
One of the people who's sort of been on this journey with me. Probably it'll be Clay or Mitch, just because I give them the worst stuff to draw, and they're like my good friends. They don't complain as much. Actually. So, probably one of those poor guys.
All right, speaking of your collaborators, Joe Johnson asks, do you make it a habit of developing strong relationships with your fellow creative team members on your books in real life? You seem very chummy with them on social media. Does that carry over?
It's different for everyone. I hate to say it depends, but I'll give you specific examples instead of just saying it depends. I did a comic book called Omega Man, which I'm super proud of, with Barnaby Bagenda, who drew it beautifully, and each issue had to be so exact because it was a 9-panel. It was this reflective, where each issue reflected itself, and then the first 6 issues, the panel structure reflected the last 6 issues in the panel structure, so it all looked like an omega shape, which is a reflective figure if you think about it.
Awesome.
That is way in the weeds. But so that's a very complicated relationship for a writer and artist to have to figure that out. I have never in my life spoken to Barnaby Bagenda. I have never emailed with him. He has an agent. I just wrote scripts and sent them off. He's in Indonesia, and he drew them beautifully and perfectly. I think after it was all over, I texted him to be like, "Can I buy some art from you?" That was like the first time I ever communicated with him directly. So sometimes, even though like that seems like it would take such a close collaboration, Gabriel Walta, the bestest artist, I love Gabriel Walta, who did Vision with me. Mm-hmm. We didn't know each other at all. He's in Spain. We met one time at a Comic-Con, hung out for an hour. We were like immediately brothers. We had so much in common. But that was basically it. That was just one time. Mikel Janin, who I have been working with for 4 or 5 years, since Grayson 1, and we just did, the best-selling comic of the year together. I've talked to him in person one time in those 4 years. Because he doesn't do conventions, Mikel. He's from Spain. So I never see him.
Did Mikel also do the Swamp Thing issue? Am I remembering that correctly?
No, that was Mitch.
That was Mitch. Okay, well, yeah, I love that one too. And Mitch and his mighty beard, absolutely.
So that's one side of the spectrum. So those are, and we work closely together. We have a common vision, but we just don't. We're not in the same place at the same time. And they're my brothers, and we sort of communicate. But then like there's guys, Mitch. Like I'm Mitch Gerads. I'm. I don't think this is a secret, but I'm the godfather to his kid. Yes. Mitch and I are like super close friends, and we text and DM each other all day long. And the same goes with Clay Mann, who I'm doing Heroes in Crisis with, and Tony Daniel, who just came on. We're texting back and forth all the time. So it depends. It completely depends on the relationship with the artist. And I think sometimes it helps, and sometimes it doesn't. I hate it depends. It's the worst answer, but I gave you specific examples.
Yeah, you did. Absolutely. No, you took us around the horn. You did good. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I have right now the artist I'm working with right now, which let me see if I can get them all. I'm working with Clay Mann, Mitch Gerads, Tony Daniel, Mikel Janin, and Lee Weeks. I think I got them. Those 5 guys are the artists I'm working with right now. I would put those 5 guys against any 5 guys in the history of comics.
Cool.
I think I work with the best artists that are out there, and I cannot believe I've sort of been blessed with this, with the art I got in. Getting Mister Miracle pages that sort of transcend the form, getting Heroes in Crisis pages where Clay Mann is turning into David Mazzucchelli meets Jim Lee. Tony Daniel's Batman is going to be a definitive one, and Mikel just keeps pumping out beauty. I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in comics in terms of art.
I completely agree.
And Lee Weeks is just the best.
Well, yeah, no, and Lee's done incredible work with you. Finch has done incredible work with you. I think
Stupid David won't come back. I'm trying to get that guy back. Don't get me started on David. He knows. He knows.
No, and really, again, I just think you really did achieve in creating this incredible love story with Batman and Catwoman through these issues. And
Joelle Jones. That's what I forgot.
Joelle, of course, and
she's graduated. I don't write for her anymore. She's too good for me. I get it.
Well, that leads into the next question, which is from Catherine Nicanen. I hope I'm saying your name right, Catherine. When story beats are needed to be told in 2 books, how do you work that out with the other writer? For instance, Joelle Jones, Catwoman. If there will be some crossovers or need to know what the other character is at, sort of things. Do you get to know or affect the plot of the other book? Did that make sense? Do you know what she's saying?
Yeah, no. It does.
It's my reading more than your question, Catherine.
Yeah, it's the last part that's hard to answer. The first part is how do you work together? Of course, you just have meetings, and you talk to each other, and you share emails, and you share visions. I think the hardest part this is well known in DC. I am not a good collaborator. I'm in terms of writing, because I'm terrible at telling other people what to write. I never want to tell, like, here, this is your story. This is what you have to do to support my story. I'm just not good at it. And I'm not good at someone giving me a script and being like, what do you think, Tom? And I'm like, this is how you need to write. I'm just not good at it. I was back in my days in my previous job, like my last job was as a manager. I managed people and I hated it. I just don't like telling people what to do. So that's sort of, I feel like I could be a better Batman writer if I was like, okay, this is what detective should be, and this is what Batgirl should be, and this is what, and we'll all sort of hit each other. But I like freedom as a writer, and I feel like other writers should have their own freedom, and I'm just kind of sticking to that. Also, I just don't have time. So it's a combination of things. But I mean, Catwoman in specific is really easy because Joelle and I are just kind of friends.
Cool.
So we know where the story's going in terms of, like, I was like, Joelle, here's sort of. Joelle and I worked together first, right? She worked with me as an artist, right. And so she was in on sort of where Catwoman was going in her development. And the idea, all along in bringing Joelle on was to launch her as someone with Frank Miller as potential in this industry, someone who can write and draw, and write as well as she draws and draws as well as she writes.
That's right.
And we wanted to launch her from the biggest platform that DC Comics has, which was Batman. So Joelle doesn't need anyone to. You just look at her art and you realize she's a superstar. But we just wanted as many people as possible to look at that art. So that was the plan from the beginning, was to sort of
showcase her.
Showcase her. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Give her space in which to succeed. And she did, not shocking anyone at all.
Yeah, great first issue. And no, as you say, her writing at Oni and stuff. And I'm blanking right now. It was The Woman Killer, and I can't remember the name of her wonderful book, wasn't it?
Joelle, Lady Killer.
Lady Killer, of course. Thank you.
Yeah,
I knew.
I have a page up on my wall.
That's awesome. No, it's a fantastic book. She came through town for Lady Killer at one of my favorite stores, Challengers Comics, and I got to hang. And I think I said this in our last conversation too. Got to hang out with her and the Challengers, one of the Challenger owners, Patrick Brower, and we karaoke'd all night. And it was a lot of fun. And I keep meaning to get her on to do a proper word balloon, because I think she's amazing. She's a tremendous artist, tremendous writer. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's and just whip smart. And yeah, she understood. I've said this before, but like, I was doing Catwoman. We went in for a meeting to talk about sort of this long 100-issue arc, and she's the one who sort of said to me, she's like, "Don't forget, Catwoman is a bad guy." Like, on some level, she likes stealing shit. Like, you can't write her just to be Batman's ideal. Batman's ideal is obviously not a criminal, right? Like, Batman hates criminals. Like, you can't just idealize her through Batman. Remember that she is her own person. She has this edge to her, and that's part of her. And she was 100% right that I was starting to idealize her too much and sort of turn her into this this character that she historically is not, and I was missing that part of her character. That's why that sort of issue exists where she steals the wedding dress. It's that. I think you could that just came right out of Joelle's idea that, like, don't forget this is a criminal, and I think you can see it as soon as she took the reins of her Catwoman book, and her first issue is beautiful, and it perfectly captures that character of a woman who is torn between sort of, she has this impulse in her to take things, and it's part of how she was raised and how she was brutally raised, and you can never forget that sort of, that she's not just, you know, an ideal beauty for Batman to love. She's her own woman, and she has her own problems and her own redemptions.
Would you say, that reminds me that I wanted to ask you this, is Holly Selina's Jason Todd, in that Holly continues to disappoint her, and also she knows that while she's flawed, Holly, that she still will ultimately, you know, try to protect her as she has and stuff, and I just see kind of a symmetry between their relationship and Jason and Bruce's relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it gets into spoilery stuff, because I think at this point you don't know if Holly is how, because I mean, there's historically the relationship between them, and then there's a relationship if you add my shit to it. So I mean, historically they've been sort of tighter, and you know, that's like her sidekick best friend character. Mm-hmm. But someone who was raised the same way she was raised, and with that same sort of abuse and the same sort of system, but didn't get sort of out fast enough. That's sort of how I see her.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't want you to spoil your story. You know that.
But in my story, if you've read 50, I'll spoil a little bit. I mean, obviously Holly betrays Catwoman at the end of that and bows down to Bane. But the idea is, when did Holly become a Bane agent? I mean, I've revealed that she's killed 237 people. Was that before or after? Was that part of the plan?
Right.
And you have to remember that in that room is Psycho Pirate. Psycho Pirate could take over Superman's brain. You don't think he could take over Holly's? So you have to remember that who Bane controls and who just obeys him is an important question to this whole thing.
Very good. I like it. Okay, here now. Let's reach back and ask a question here. Oh wait. First of all,
I love these. Are great questions. Thank you, anyone who's on Twitter.
Yeah, man. No, this really was fast. I forgive me, folks. I thought we'd have more time. And as I told Tom off the air and everything, I thought we were talking an hour later, but that was totally on me, and I should have put this up earlier. But
no problem.
Let's see. I'm just looking for a good one.
I will sit here. I will.
I hear you. Oh, now Ben Becker asks, and this is so stupid, I'm going to still throw it out there just to, you know, Mr. Miracle, fully spelling the word Mr. Miracle, or Mr. MR period Miracle. Really, dude? Really?
It's a good question. So when I write, I use autocorrect shortcuts. So when I type, I don't type out Mr. Miracle. I just type MM, and then Mr. Miracle pops up, and it's fully spelled. So I say Mr. Mister because that's what happens when I put it in. But this is a script thing, which is hard to do. I try, and I don't always succeed, and I'm sure it drives Mitch crazy. I write Mr. Miracle when he's in costume, and I write Scott Free when he's not in costume, same as I do Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Nice.
But sometimes I get them mixed up. I think probably because Scott is shorter, and it makes it look like I've written less or something. I don't know. But yeah, I would say Mr. Mister.
Fair enough. All right, William Meyer. Well, I think that is the correct answer. I just, for brevity, and also the fact that Twitter has limited characters, you know, I do the Mister. I do the MR period, because we all know, yeah, it is Mister. That's the title of the book, man. You know, I mean, yeah. So I go. So Seth Meyers, before the Seth Meyers things, he comes to me. And he's super cool and super nice, and he's an actual nerd. And the way the Seth Meyers thing started is he went into a comic shop. They reached out to me. I should know their names, but I don't. And he asked, he's like, "Do you know if Tom King would want to come on my show?" And there was the comic shop that called DC and said Seth Meyers wants Tom King to come on my show. That's a super honor. So sure. He comes into the room and he goes, "Tom, I love your stuff. I'm reading it constantly. Miracle Man is my favorite thing. The way you write Miracle Man." He's like, I read every issue of Miracle Man, and you're like, do I correct Seth Meyers, or like what are the rules here? Like,
have I written enough issues of Batman that I can correct this? I was like, oh yeah, no, Miracle Man. I do tell.
He's amazing.
When I was on the air with him, he turned to me and he goes, Tom, you have 2 children. And I actually said, yes, I have 3 children. I lost a child. I was like, Seth Meyers just said I have 2 children, so I'll go with it. I don't know which one's missing. Let's say it's the youngest. So I just have to.
Because he won't remember this.
He won't remember. So it's Mr. Miracle, although a lot of people call him Miracle Man.
Well, and of course,
I can't imagine why. It's not like I was influenced at all there.
Perhaps someday you will write Miracle Man, a fine character on his own.
Ugh, what an awful idea to write Miracle Man. Some characters, I have
no
this
interest
theory,
in Miracle Man. Interesting.
I have this theory that some characters have been written well enough that there's no reason to write them anymore. And
I can appreciate
a lot of people disagree with me. A lot of creators disagree with me, and we have this argument. This is a good late night bar argument.
Who's on the list? Who else is on the list?
So many people are on the list. Like,
tell me.
I think Swamp Thing's on. I've written Swamp Thing twice, so I'll tell you I violated the rule. I feel like Alan Moore did the best Swamp Thing you could do, and I mean, except if you want to look back at the Bernie Wrights and stuff, which is just drawn so perfect, and Bernie Wrights and stuff. Sure. But I do feel like Alan Moore kind of put a touch on that character that it feels like if I tried to write it, it would just be a sort of an echo of, like, I couldn't write better than Swamp Thing. I think it's funny because there are people who violate that rule. I would say like I would say a character like Daredevil. Like, I can't write Daredevil better than Frank Miller wrote Daredevil, and I can't write it better than Bendis wrote Daredevil. And those 2 runs would haunt that comic for me. Like, I just don't know how I could do anything. I don't like they wrote all the good Daredevils.
I hear you. No, I understand. And taking nothing away from any of these other creators. Hell, your buddy Scott Snyder did a great job on Swamp Thing, and
I know. And it's Charles Soule's doing a fantastic job.
Doing a great job on Daredevil. Absolutely, man.
Wade and Zombie did. I have nothing but envy for them. But just for me, just talking for me, it would be just personally hard to find new room. Sure. I think this is true of the X-Men. I think it's hard for me. It's whenever I would think of myself writing an X-Men comic, I would always be like, I can't do what Claremont did. You can't outdo Claremont. You just feel like an echo of that person. You feel like you're just trying to catch that high again. I think that's what's great about Grant Morrison. I feel like he came along and he's like, fuck that high. I'm going to come a completely different high. You know, like he
I like that when we both talk about Scottish creators, we have to do the Scottish accent. Go on.
Grant Morrison is the most fun. If anyone's ever talked to Grant Morrison has never met a creator he doesn't love. So if you ever talk to him, you feel like the sun is shining on you for the first time in your life. You just walk up to him and be like, hi, I'm Tom. I just started on Grayson. We wrote I read Grayson #1. It's the best fucking comic I ever read. You're a fucking genius, Tom King. Your name is going to be carved into the legends of comics. I'm like, Tim wrote most of it. You're just like...
Speaking of...
But you feel so warm.
Speaking of Grayson, now you just said you have difficulty collaborating. Was it tough collaborating with Tim Seeley?
Tim Seeley is the easiest person to work with. No,
never mind. He's great.
Tim,
and we both love Tim. I know that. So go on.
I married a Midwesterner. You're a Midwesterner. Tim is a Midwesterner. There's an exception for people from the coldest parts of the country, I guess.
That's true.
But Tim and I had a good system where, again, like I said, I'm not good at telling people how to write. We would just switch off issues. We would get on the phone and we'd be like, okay, here's where we think it should go. We'd sort of hash that out. And then I would write my issue and I would turn it in and it would get edited and then he'd write his issue and I would maybe comment on like, hey, one line is wrong or something. But like the collaboration was I did not need to tell Tim Seeley how to write a comic book.
Sure.
And he did need to tell me that how to write a comic book because I was young and so
Sure.
he did and was very kind.
Sure.
And so that's why that collaboration worked because we both knew how to sort of give each other that kind of space. I mean, we just did it again. He wrote the these sort of issues that led up to the wedding. I
love that side series, and I intend to talk to him about that in the weeks ahead. Go on.
Yeah, I wasn't. It was one of those things where we were moving up to this big moment, and DC's like, "Hey, let's do some sort of." I didn't have room to tell every single story about this wedding.
Sure.
I didn't have time for the bachelor party. I didn't have stories, and they're like, "You're not telling those stories. You find someone else tells them." I said, whatever. Basically, let me get to my script. Like again, not good collaborator. And they're like, well, what if we get Tim Seeley to do it? I was like, yes. I was like,
That's great.
easy. So again, it was like old times. Seeley got on the phone, and he's just like, here's this idea, and we're like, we had this sort of problem, and we were doing playing around with it, and then we got to the end point where I was like, okay, yes, just, and I just said yes, right, and that was basically my contribution. He came up with everything in those things, and they're brilliant. And when you can, that's the best. That's the way I collaborate, which is again not leadership. It's just kind of capitulation.
I understand. Let's go back, because you were just saying that some versions of characters and writers do kind of a final word, and it's tough to come back from that. William Meyer asks, do you like what they did with the MCU version, the cinematic universe version of Vision in Infinity War? Do you think the MCU Vision would have retained his identity once the... Oh, I guess not. I guess it's slightly different. I thought that if they were asking if compared to the way you've written the Vision. But do you think the MCU Vision would have retained his identity once the Infinity Stone was removed, or would it have been similar to an android lobotomy? That's still an interesting question.
I didn't really consider... All right, I should clarify. I really love Paul Bettany's performance, and they did do Vision in a sweater vest in the second Avengers movie, which my wife completely thinks comes from my vision, and I tell her no, these things get made much farther in advance. But I was very excited and will claim that it did, even though it clearly did not. I am gonna say that is an incredibly good question, and I am not the person to answer. I saw that movie. I loved Infinity War. I thought it was for the best time I've had at theaters, where I was just in awe.
Agreed.
Where I was like, they're doing with movies what I used to love about comics, where it's just like all the worlds collide into each other.
Yes.
And
they retained their voices. That was the best thing. Nobody seemed insincere, because of course it's the same producers, and they're vetting these scripts very carefully. But that was the great thing, that the Guardians with Thor really felt like the Guardians with Thor. It didn't feel forced at all, and they each spoke appropriately. And God, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Doctor Strange. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, I loved it, and you could see, and you just like, it looked like a big love letter to Jim Starlin, and it was it was beautiful. And but let me put the but on my love. Right. I saw it. I took my kids. I have a 8-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy, and I took them to this movie, and I bought whatever tickets. I didn't even look, and I show up, and it was a 4D version of the movie. So, and I did not know what the 4D version of a movie is, but so you go into a theater in the middle of Washington, D.C., and you sit in chairs, and it's like a fucking roller coaster. The chairs go up and down and sideways, and water sprays in your face, and wind comes at you when there's wind. Yes.
I've never had this experience. Go on.
It's like Smell-O-Vision, but for modern times, and much more expensive when I looked at my receipt, my Fandango receipt. And so I have 2 young children who have, this is like their 4th or 5th, sort of adult movie, and now they're going side to side while water is blowing in their face, and I'm just thinking, this is awesome, and they're going to explode, and there was. And they're asking for candy, and there's popcorn spilling, and who's going to need to go to the bathroom because it's very long. And so I feel like I did not get enough subtlety to answer that question in terms of my watching. Ask me again when it comes out on DVD, and my wife and I watch it late at night, and I fall asleep halfway through, because that's what it means to be a parent.
I needed 2 showings because I've become very narcoleptic in the movie theaters. The lights go down, the rumble of the sound, you're in a comfortable chair, and especially now that I'm working overnights, I fall asleep, and it happened to me, and I always say that's a $15 nap that I've just taken. So the first time I saw 10 random Infinity War scenes, and I loved every one of them. And then I woke up at the end of the movie, and maybe there's somebody listening that hasn't seen it, so everyone knows what I'm talking about. You see Thanos at a very key moment, and I really had to go to the bathroom, and I'm just like, this is, well, and obviously people know what happened, but yeah, I'm like, I really got to go to the bathroom, but this kind of feels like the end of the movie. Dun, dun! hit the music, hit the credits. So I immediately bolt for the bathroom. I don't want to see the scene after the credits, because I know I'm going to come back and see the whole movie again. So yeah, that was the Friday it opened, and then the following Monday I saw it again. So I spent $28 on Infinity War to finally see the whole thing, and luckily I did not fall asleep on the second showing. And but yeah, it really is a gamble, and Seeley and Norton can attest to sitting next to me falling asleep. It was Seeley. It was the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, the first one, 2009. And I believe with Norton, it was Rise of the Silver Surfer that we all went. And he's like, you slept through like half the movie. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Thanks, Mike. So
I was on night shift for the Iraq War for the CIA. But yeah, so I remember being one of those off-seat schedules. And you never know when the tire hits you when you're on those things. You're like, oh, man, I guess I'm going down.
It's true. A nap could happen at 4. It could happen at 7. And I really was like, I went to a 4 o'clock show. I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. Wrong. So, yeah, that's a lesson learned. And because of that, I've seen Solo. I have not seen Deadpool 2 yet. I have not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp yet. And I have not seen Incredibles 2 yet. Having children, I'm sure you've seen them all already.
No, I saw Solo. I didn't see. My wife took the kids to see Incredible 2. Damn her.
Oh, good for her. Well, that's all right.
And I know I heard Bennis's review on your thing, and now so I'm like dying.
Yeah, the Godfather of Godfather 2 of animated movies. I like that.
The Godfather 2. I like the Godfather better than Godfather 2. I know.
I think the Godfather's superior to the Godfather 2, but it's still a great. It's probably the best sequel ever.
Oh yeah, of course.
And yeah, I mean, well, yeah, you can't, it's just like I liked Guardians 2 fine. I think it's a really fun movie, but the first movie, all the spontaneity, all the surprises and stuff, and you can do that shooting Mo Green's eye, those kind of beautiful surprises that you only get in Godfather 1. Come on, and of course, 2 has its own little moments, like shooting Fredo, for instance. Good stuff, man. Oh, you see, here we go. We'll probably get to more digressions in a second. What Josh Cruz asks, good guy, Josh Cruz. What is your next big 12-issue maxi series? You can tell me, right?
Well, I mean, Heroes in Crisis is a big old maxi series. I guess it's not a maxi series.
Is it an ongoing? What is the plan for Heroes in Crisis?
It's 8 issues, I think.
Okay.
7 or 8 issues.
Okay.
And starts in September.
Yes, I know.
So, ooh. I mean, that's a pretty big one. So, but it involves. It's like I've never done something like this before. It involves, the entire DCU. I mean, Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman are obviously the center of it because they are sort of the heart and soul of the DCU. But it's a story about sort of all the characters, and a ton of them are touched upon. Yeah. So it's Clay Mann is drawing it. It's the best art he's ever done. I keep telling him he's sort of transcending himself. So if you read Action Comics 1000, which Clay and I did together, or the DC Nation Zero we did together, or if you read the Super Friends arc that we did together,
yes,
this is our next collaboration, and it is gorgeous. Yeah. So. I don't know, should I pitch that, or I don't know what to do. But anyways, yeah. So that, I guess that's the next big thing. After that, I don't know. I think I'm going to. See, right now I'm doing Mister Miracle. I'm doing Heroes in Crisis. I'm doing Batman, obviously, and I'm doing this Wal-Mart Superman thing.
Yes, I want to get to obviously Wal-Mart Superman because. Okay. Well, I think you've answered Josh's question. I hope before we is there more to talk about as far as what you can say about Heroes in Crisis?
I mean, for people who don't know what it is, it's a story about just the idea that these sort of superheroes that we all have come to love and live these incredibly violent lives, that violence has consequences on them psychologically and physically, and that they have to deal with those consequences, just like anyone who's gone through violence has to sort of deal with those consequences, which, the easy way to say it's PTSD, but that sort of sometimes just implies horror to some people, but sometimes not. But and because they're superheroes and because they help each other out, years ago, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman set up a place called Sanctuary, which you go to talk about this violence and to find a way to not have that take you over, to not have the horrors of being a superhero, of seeing people die every day, of not being able to save everyone every day, to deal with that psychologically. You go there and you find ways to sort of come out. And what happens is, it's in the solicits, is in the first issue, there's a mass killing at the center. And the mystery is who did the mass killing and why.
Ooh, okay. Are there I'm looking forward to the potential, and the only reason why I'm calling this is that they're not Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, or even Justice Leaguers necessarily. Will we see C and D level DC Universe heroes and villains that maybe we haven't seen in a couple decades in some cases?
Yeah, 100%. I love C and D level characters. Those are my favorite. Like I work with Kite Man.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what you consider C-level characters. I mean,
do you
consider Mr. Miracle a C-level character? I feel maybe he might be because he's not like
yes, actually, I do. I think, but prior to your miniseries, yeah, I think, or maxi series, I suppose, I do think Mr. Miracle qualifies as a C-level character. Blue Beetle, I think, is the original Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, even though he had his own series and stuff. Ragman, what's his face just did the Ragman miniseries, and it was really good. Shame on me.
So, My philosophy, and people probably know this about me, is what I do.
Ray Fox. I just want to say Ray Fox because it took me a second to think of who did the Ragman. The great Ray Fox.
The Ragman, yeah, which is cool. It was all about the Afghan war. It's cool. Yep. My theory on these sort of things is, I come up with a scenario. Like I called Dan. And I say, here's the scenario. There's going to be this place. There's going to be a murder. There's going to be, there's going to be some suspects, and there's going to be some stars. And then I say, can you fill in the holes for me and give me those characters? That way, if you give me the characters, then I'll have the room to completely destroy them and rebuild them, or destroy them and destroy them.
Cool.
Which I think is a better approach than sort of being like, I've always been in love with. Who's like a Rand? I've always been,
Dial H for Hero.
Yeah, with Dial H for Hero, and that's the character has to be in there, and I just have to. And then they're like, well, he's in this book and that book, so and then you're like, no, it's just, like it doesn't work out for you. But if they give you the character, then when they come to you, be like, oh, we need. I was like, hey, you gave this character to me. I was like, oh,
sure.
That's how Mr. Miracle got started. I didn't choose to write about Mr. Miracle. I asked Dan. I said, I want space. I want to do something crazy with the character. I want to do something as deep as possible, to dive as deeply into a character as sort of they did in Watchmen. And I was thinking of the Charlton's characters, like,
sure,
if more could do with the Charlton's characters, we can do with any character. And Dan said, here, do it with Mr. Miracle, do it with the New Gods. And so that's what I did here. And he's like, and I was like, I need 2 stars for this series, and the 2 stars he said were Booster Gold and Harley Quinn. So they're the 2 ones he gave me, and so they're the 2 focus of the characters. So if you think of those are the 5 main characters are Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Booster Gold and Harley Quinn.
Very cool.
So they'll be in the center of the story, and then dozens and dozens of A to F list characters will be involved.
That's awesome. No, that's great, man. And again, that's why I love the DCU, man. It's funny because certainly there are a couple hundred X-Men and mutants you can look at as far as Marvel goes, and certainly Marvel has a deep bench as well. But I don't know, man. I think growing up when I did and being exposed to a lot of those Silver Age characters in the backs of the original 100-page spectaculars. That made those characters just more alive to me and be like, oh, I'd like to read more about these guys. And Robbie Reed, that's why he immediately sprang to mind. Dial H for Hero. What?
Oh yeah.
Now mentioning the 100-page spectaculars, what can you tell us about your Superman story?
So people don't know. So DC Comics did a deal with Wal-Mart to release these 100-page giants. And what they are 12 pages of new material, and then 88 pages of reprint. I write for a living. 88 pages of reprint material, and I've seen them, and they're just beautiful. They're just like warm your heart as a comic fan, because it's on kind of old school paper. And
is it really? It's on like Newsrag.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's terrific. Well, and I'm sure that's what helps keep the price point down. It's $5 for one of these.
Yeah, it's $5 for 100. It's $5 for 100 pages. And the idea is that people will go into a Walmart and purchase these things and look at these stories, and then new customers will come into comic book stores. We got to drive more customers into comic book stores. That just has to be the goal of DC Comics and Marvel Comics too.
Agreed.
We need to grow this audience constantly, always. I mean, you and I, John, we both started off getting comics off the rack
when we were little kids. Yeah,
when we were little kids, and we moved
just like you said earlier. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to recreate that experience that so many of us had, where you go to a store and I have kids, so you go to a store and your kid's whining and they're just whining. You're like, oh, stop. What can I? Oh, $5. Okay, here's $5.
$5 is today's 50 cents or 25 cents, and I get it.
Look at then the kid just reads that and then how can I? And then because we're really just drug dealers, how can I get more?
True.
And so, as a way to do that, they asked Brian. They asked a few creators, but they asked Brian and I to write 12 issues that are exclusive to Wal-Mart. It was sort of part of the deal. I mean, it was it was the price of getting into the stores, is that they wanted some exclusive content.
Sure.
And so I don't really like that. I would make. Just behind the scenes stuff. Ever since your Jerry Ordway thing, it was the best interview ever, because he's just like, here's the actual fucking numbers.
No, I know that was incredibly generous of him. And if people haven't heard it, I asked Jerry about, he created Cat Grant, for example, and Cat Grant was and is an important part of the Supergirl television series. And thankfully now creators are getting royalties and everything. So yeah, I didn't want him to. Like I said, I'm not your accountant, but I am curious, are they taking care of you? Are you getting a decent amount of money for creating Cat Grant and her appearing on television? And he laid it out, and I absolutely suggest you listen to that episode of Word Balloon. I won't spoil. Go back and listen to the Jerry Ordway interview. It got a lot of downloads, and I'm sure a lot of you already did listen to it, but for people who haven't. But continuing on, so yes, the Wal-Mart material. Well, and this might help answer. Jonathan Schwartz had the question: will your Superman material for the Wal-Mart books ever be collected or reprinted for comic stores down the line?
That's out of my control. I mean, I hope so, and I would think so, but I don't control it, so I can't say yes or no.
And I figured that would be the answer. I think as well that it's likely, and I'm sure that there's a way to represent that stuff after Wal-Mart has had its exclusivity. That Yeah,
it's the exclusivity part of it kind of sucks, if Brian Bendis and Nick Darrington does the covers for Mr. Miracle and draws one of the best Batmans you've ever seen. If they were to do a #1 Batman and put it in comic book stores, they would make so much more money than if they put it in Walmart stores.
Understood.
Like there's much more sales, but we have to grow this audience. Like we have to. It is our responsibility as creators to not leave comics. To when we leave this world, to not kill comics. We have to bring in audiences. We can't just grow with them. So it sounds like we're making some grand sacrifice. We're fucking not. We're writing comics, but
no. But this is like DC's Shogun Jump, if I'm saying it correctly, in terms of repurposing old material, presenting it in a very affordable way, and that's why I'm really glad to hear that it is on NewsRag, because I'm like, wow, man, I can't believe $5 for 100 pages of comics and stuff. And yes, I know 88 pages of it is reprints and stuff, but no, I think it makes sense. I mean, in terms of give them something that makes it special, that will drive people to Walmart, because obviously that's Walmart's intent. And yeah, I think it's the perfect price, like you said, of a mom being able to satisfy their kid with a decent amount of a nice thick book, and that hopefully will make them into new comic book readers. And again, that's how you and I got into it. Not only that, I remember the Whitman bag of, in my time, it was 3 comics. I think as the years progressed, it was 5 comics in a bag, for 99 cents. And you'd get a bunch of random comics. I'd get a Damian Hellstrom middle issue that I'd never know what the beginning was or what the end, but I was entertained as hell. And it was dirt cheap. It was 99 cents for a bag of 3 comics.
So that's like the self-sacrificing spin on it. Now let me give you the actual truth of what the decision was. But I'm glad I gave you. I give you the
company
Simon
line.
Schuster PR lady version first. Now I'll tell you the story. She didn't want me to say. Well, what really is somebody came to me, and his name was Dan DiDio, and said, "Do you want to do a Superman story with Andy Kubert? And it doesn't have to be in continuity. It just has to be 12 pages, and you do 12 page increments." I was like, you're offering me basically All-Star Superman with Andy Kubert? And he's like, yeah. I was like, Like you just you can't say there's no in me that could say that. I was like, this is the great. I want to do something brilliant, and I love the short story form. I that's just something I adore. I won the Eisner for last year, and so the idea of sort of working with Andy, who is a storytelling genius, it's so bizarre to work with him. I mean, his father obviously wrote the book on how to draw comics.
Damn straight, Joe Kubert,
and then Andy and his brother now run the school, and Adam now run the school on how to draw comics. My favorite Adam story was if you ever go to the Universal Studios one in Florida, the one that's next to Disney World. I went there with my kids, and there's like obviously like a Marvel land there, and they have these huge posters up that are just like 30 feet high of Wolverine and Spider, and they're all Andy Kubert drawings.
Wow.
Adam Kubert drawings.
Still
sorry,
wow.
Andy. Adam Kubert. And I don't, and like saying to my kids, I was like, I know that guy. Like, he's a nice dude. He knows me. If he saw my face, he'd say hello. And he did that. Millions of people walk under his stuff. I felt so famous. And he would say Mr. Miracle instead of Miracle Man.
Yes, he would.
So Andy, we're doing a story. It's called Superman Up in the Sky. It's there's a framework on it, but it's really just it's going to be 12 almost like EC Comics short stories.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But I mean the idea. I steal from old movies. You know me. I constantly. So this is basically The Searchers. Don't tell anyone I stole from.
Ooh, that's good.
John
that's
Ford
interesting. Okay.
There's a little girl gets kidnapped, and Superman has to go after her, and he becomes obsessed with sort of the journey. And it's and she gets kidnapped into space, so it's called Up in the Sky. He leaves Earth behind.
Ooh, so it's a cosmic Superman story.
I love Superman's. I love sci-fi stuff. I love like. I know you because you were literally the talking head in the video, but I love Isaac Asimov, like that kind of sort of old school 50s sci. So like, so it's Superman in space, and each issue is sort of him getting closer and closer to finding this girl, and him having to make more and more sacrifices, like in The Searchers, have more and more sacrifices as he gets farther from Earth and closer to the girl. And each one is a self-contained short story, and I'm using this very sort of experimental storytelling technique, which you'll see when you read it, that I didn't think I could pull off, but we're going to try. And it's some of the most beautiful comics you've ever seen. And
of course,
Andy's 3 of them are in the bag already. So, I got to send you one. The third issue is a boxing match.
Oh yes, please.
I will send it to you. It's Superman and Mido. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to tell you. It's Superman and Mido, who's an old character that's forgotten purposely. But it's 12 rounds of and like super boxing.
Oh, fantastic!
And because I just listened to your podcast on boxing and comics, and the whole time I'm shouting at you like, "It's coming!"
That's great.
I gotta send you on there.
Thanks, man. You know my history in the sport and everything, and where you also mentioned me in the middle of the podcast, which also made me upset again. Must have been the Michael Cronenberg conversation, because I also had Doug Fisher, who's the editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine, and he's more of a Marvel guy. He knows his history.
It was the Bronze Age Batman conversation.
Yes, yeah, he was. He wrote the Batcave Companion for Tomorrows, co-wrote it with Michael Urie. And he had
which is brilliant. If you haven't picked it up, I've read the whole book cover to cover, and I love it.
Well, and he covers, again, 70s Batman. That's my wheelhouse. That's when I was buying. I remember 20-cent comics. Thank you very much, and I'm proud of that.
And he knows Noir Alley, which is my favorite show on television.
Oh yeah, he's tight with Eddie Muller. Yeah,
I know that kind of freaked me out a little bit.
I know. I'm hoping. Mike, if you're listening, eventually I will be asking for Eddie Muller's contact info, and I would love to get Eddie Muller on because he's a Batman fan. And his dad was a sports writer and covered boxing, as you heard. Oh, no, I love it. Well, and, Batman and Wildcat, certainly, and what Bo Smith did and Chuck back in the day, and also just their original team-ups and everything. No, I love the comic book element, or the boxing element. There's also that great Joe Kubert story. First of all, Sergeant Rock was a boxer. And that's how he got his nickname, Rock.
Started out as a boxer in the first issue of Sergeant Rock. The first issue of Sergeant Rock is a half-page splash. One he's boxing, one he's in the war.
That's exactly right. Very cool. Well, and also, I have to say, your 12-page length of each story, and it sounds very 2000 AD, and that's what I really loved about getting to know the 2000 AD stuff. Rogue Trooper with Dave Gibbons. A lot of that stuff would be like 8 pages, and they'd be self-contained 8-page stories, but then they would absolutely lead to the next story as well. And I that is one of the things about 2000 AD I find great, that they can be so episodic and get a lot of story in a very short amount of space. So it'll be fun to see. Again, like you said, you did it with Elmer and Batman last year. That won you an Eisner. So
no, I didn't win an Eisner for that. Hope I find out next week if I won an Eisner for that.
Oh, I thought last year was for the Elmer story. Oh no, it was the Ace the Bat Hound story, right?
I ran for Ace the Bat Hound last year and for Vision.
So this year you're up for Elmer?
This year I'm up for Elmer.
Nice. Is that your only nomination for the Eisners, or do you have others?
No, Mister Miracle, kindly, every single person who worked on Mister Miracle got nominated. So obviously, Mitch got nominated for pencils and inks. Mitch got nominated for colors. Clayton Cowles, who does the letters, got nominated. Great. And I got nominated for writing, and the whole series got nominated. So so I'm nominated for writing Mister Miracle, and for, not that I keep track or care. But
I congratulate you on continuing to make me very uncomfortable in the best way every time I'm reading each chapter of Mr. Miracle. It's disturbing in the best possible way.
I really hope Elmer Fudd wins, because I really want Lee Weeks to win an Eisner, and because he hasn't even been nominated. This is his first nomination.
Wow.
And it would just be the greatest sort of honor of my life to sort of to be on a stage with that guy, because he's just he's one of the most brilliant artists in the history of our medium. Agreed. and I think people are rediscovering how brilliant he's been for 30 years, So, and I hope that wins. Of all, I mean, Mitch is going to win. Mitch is a young dude. He's going to win Eisner after Eisner for the rest of his life. I hope, so will Lee, but just in case.
I'm with you. No, I'm totally with you. And also, I just love the fact that story puts Elmer Fudd in a triangle with Batman and Silver St. Cloud, and that they both went after Silver. Silver's always, I love those, as obviously you do as well, those Englehart Rogers stories. And it was, and again, that's why I think your stuff with Catwoman has that same kind of resonance for this generation, because it is interesting when Batman has a love interest. I got really angry at fans who kind of rejected when Englehart and Rogers came back and did Dark Detective 2, as they called it, and 3, for that matter. And, I don't think they quite understood, and they were like, oh, it's kind of hokey, and it's a little too old school, and it's like, they even were picking on the fact that Englehart was using thought bubbles in the panels, and it's like, dude, just chill. You don't understand. You go back and read those original stories; they're beautiful stories, and shows. There's this rejection in some circles of the heroes. We don't want to know about their feelings. We just want them to hit people. Basically, that's the shorthand that I'm getting from some of the complaints. And I don't know. Again, as someone who's read these things for generations, it's nice to get in their heads and really hear what they're thinking about, and even having them have doubts sometimes. I think that only makes them more human and more relatable, and I think more interesting as characters, as opposed to just smashing through a wall or smashing through a window and throwing a batarang and wrapping people up.
I remember as a kid. Well, probably I was older than I would think I am, but I still have it was like greatest Marvel battles ever, and it was just had the Alan Davis Wolverine Sabretooth in it, and it had Jim Lee's Punishers stuff in there, and it started off with Thor versus the Hulk from an old Stan Lee Jack Kirby comic, and Stan wrote the introduction to it, and I remember this as just a storyteller lesson. Him saying the problem with a story between Thor and Hulk fighting is they're both super strong. So when they start hitting each other, you're basically just watching two normal people hit each other. That was such a revelation. I was like, oh, he's totally right. He's like, it's no longer a super cool superhero story. It's just a boxing story. And I was like, wow. He's like, that's why. And then he's like, that's why I put the emotional content in. And I made this a story about Thor trying to stop Hulk, or Hulk trying to, like that's why all the background stuff is in there. He's like, because if it was just the two of them punching, it wouldn't all be interesting, because it would just be the same as two normal people punching. Two people who both have superpowers are just even, and they become normal again.
Yep.
And I remember it was like one of the first lessons in storytelling where I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's why it just can't just be about the punching. It has to be about stakes. It has to be about something bigger than just the punching. All the punching has to be there, obviously.
Very cool.
That Stanley knew something about writing, I think.
Yes. I liked your encounter with Stan that you mentioned in the last episode or 2 episodes ago. I know it was a recent one.
We should say a word for Steve Ditko, because he.
Yes, by all means, feel free. Yes, and actually, it's my first opportunity. Shame on me. Actually, now that I think about it, I recorded the Bendis episode, for people who know, literally the day before Steve passed. So, I didn't have a chance on the last couple episodes to acknowledge the greatness of Steve Ditko. So, please, any thoughts you have?
He kind of gave us a lot of the vocabulary we use. I went back and looked over his Amazing Spider-Man stuff, especially, and the way sort of he uses movement, especially. I said this on Twitter, but I'll say it again. Like, I went up to Dave Gibbons at the Eisners last year. I was like, hey, man, I just want to say I'm sorry that I'm constantly stealing your 9-panel grid. And he's like, I stole that from Steve Ditko.
That's right.
And you look back and you see him sort of creating a new vocabulary of movement and even plot in terms of the soap operas of who he brought to me. His visuals are beautiful, but also he brought, which I love in comics, he brought weakness into comic books. Like Kirby brought strength. He brought weak. He brought vulnerability.
Very good.
He brought the concept that these sort of creatures could be broken. And then again, that raised the stakes for everything. And he was also a crazy, interesting recluse and who lived a cool life. My favorite behind-the-scenes story, which I'm sure I can't tell, but I'll tell it anyways. Or I don't know if this is my favorite, but at least it's one I know that I haven't seen a lot of places. So Ditko was supposed to come back to Marvel to do Spider-Man in 1999 or 1990, so like in the late 90s. And did you know this?
No, go on. Not at all.
I don't care if I talk about school a little bit. This is old history now. And then Byrne came out with, I think it's something called Spider-Man: The Secret Years or something.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
And Byrne's pitch for that was, and I remember the public pitch. The pitch was, this is what happened between the panels of the first 10 issues of Spider-Man, basically. And so Marvel had ramped up for the big Steve Ditko Return of Spider-Man. He just called him. He's like, I think you're violating my rights here, so no thank you. And I talked to the editor who talked to him on the phone, and I was like, what did you say? And like the editor just looked back to me and was like, dude, there's no convincing Steve Ditko.
Sure.
He's like, it wasn't like he's like, I'm thinking of going one way or the other. He like totally Ayn Randed. He's like, there is negative and positive, and I am now on the negative side.
Wow.
And I will not be convinced.
I thought it was going to be about the movie or something like that, because I also remember his frustration with the first movie, and that he co-created, and of course, there's the BBC Jonathan Ross In Search of Steve Ditko that's on YouTube. Everyone should watch it if they haven't already. And the other interesting thing is that Masters of Comic Art that was narrated by Harlan Ellison, and the bitter irony that we've lost both of those guys in the last month. And Harlan introduces Ditko's piece, and everyone else is on camera. Ditko isn't on camera, lets his art kind of do the visuals while he speaks about his objectivism theories. And he's a fascinating guy. He's the J.D. Salinger of comics. I said that on social media. And if Bendis is the Orson, or if as Bendis says, if Steranko is the Orson Welles of comics, then I think Ditko is the J.D. Salinger. And
that's totally fair. Or the Bill Watterson might be.
Bill Watterson is another guy, even more. If there could be two Bill Wattersons of comics, Steve and Steve Ditko, or is Watterson another Ditko?
Yeah, I just want. I feel like that Watterson and Ditko had some like they had lunch every Thursday. And
you think they're still talking about us? Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Like you talked to Paul Levitz. Paul Levitz has the best stories
about Ditko,
and I was like, yeah, well, just about everybody. He's been in comics since he was 13.
Sure.
You know. And I was like, Paul, tell me about Ditko. And he's like, oh, Ditko, yeah. Paul ran into the street, and I'd see him all the time. Like, hey, wave at him, and he waved at me. I was like, there are 3 extant pictures of him. You couldn't just like sneak a camera out and just fucking. I was like, you see him in the street, just come and click.
Yeah.
Hey, can I get a selfie with this, Steve?
And I said this, and I meant it. If people didn't see my tweet, as much as we're all sad and talking about him, he would hate this. I mean, I think he'd be more sympathetic to yourself as a fellow comic creator. And that is the continuing story that I hear, is that privately creators would just, hey, I think you're great or whatever, and he would respond and would be as kind as other times when he would blow people off. But yeah, I think the cult of personality and the idea of celebrity is really something he absolutely objected to. And again, I just point that out, the irony that this poor man has died. And, well, it's just like poor Sir Alec Guinness, who is this incredible actor. And sadly, most people under, 40 know him best as Obi-Wan Kenobi, as opposed to this amazing body of work that he did for most of his adult life.
My favorite, if you're on YouTube, if you want just some fun comic moments, there's 2 great Steve Ditko ones, of course, that he's not involved in either of them. If you, the Mary Marvel Society,
yes,
like
the record,
little record,
the flexi record,
yes,
that took you behind the scenes of Marvel in the '60s, and you hear a lot of the people on the bullpen.
Yeah, you hear Jolly Jack has something to say, and then when they get to Steve Ditko, obviously he wouldn't do it, so they're like, Steve just jumped out the window, we almost caught him,
Yes,
and. The other one is, and it's fascinating from a comics history point of view, there's just audio of Stan Lee at Princeton. It's got to be 66 or 67. And he's talking to a bunch of, when they, like Marvel Comics were all the hype. They were the pop, pop phenomenon in 67. So at the colleges, and Stan would give college tours to sort
lectures,
lectures, bask in the glow of it and spread the word, spread the gospel. And they caught him at this time where it was like 2 days after Ditko had left his famous note where he's like, I'm off. And you can literally hear like the pain in Stan's voice when someone asks him, what's going on with Spider-Man? He's like, we're getting a new artist. You're going to love it. And like, he's just like nothing's changed in 50 years. He can't reveal the name. He's like, I can't tell you who it is. It's going to be great. And then you just kind of feel like, why did he leave? And you can kind of hear Stan like literally like hesitate. You can hear him be like, he's like, Steve is he's a complicated guy. And you can the feelings of like, here's a guy that Stan had collaborated with and created something that'll last, the lifetime of the planet with. And he just kind of never understood each other, these 2 human beings. And I think it's just a fascinating tale of humanity and creativity, if anyone's interested in that.
Again, and because much like Kirby with the Fourth World, Ditko goes to DC and, gives us the Hawk and Dove and gives us the Creeper, and then goes to Charlton and we get the Question. And if my chronology is not correct, forgive me, kids. I just think, and even Mr. A, I just think everything he did afterwards. And as you said, of breaking down heroes and villains, that origin of Doctor Strange is just so classic noir. I think that and the Daredevil origin story are like the 2 best examples of like Marvel noir, in its original form and everything, and without trying to do noir as they've done in subsequent decades and stuff. That they're just these great grubby little street stories, both of them. And then of course, I love, I've always been a Doctor Strange fan from day one. Son of Origins of Marvel Comics was my introduction to Doctor Strange, and we got the origin, and then we also got a 70s Marvel story, and then I bought the Treasury edition Doctor Strange, and really just jumped in feet first, and Starlin and Englehart and all these wonderful writers. I just talked about it with Wade, how much I love Doctor Strange. Jason Aaron just did a great job. Donny Cates just did a great job. So yeah, and then also Denny's transformation of the Question, Denny O'Neil.
Oh yeah,
which he even says, kind of went against the grain of what Ditko was originally doing with the character, but I love the original stories, and I really did love what Denny did and Dennis Cowan with the question.
Yeah.
So that's just a classic DC run.
I just ran to Dennis Cowan at a con and totally fanboyed out on him.
He's amazing. Yeah, I got to do a panel with him in Indiana at a con in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it was great. And I've been trying to get him back ever since, and it's been tough. But no, I'm a huge fan, so I'm hoping one day.
One day.
There's our Steve Ditko hunk. That was good. Harlan Ellison, you ever meet him? You ever meet Harlan?
No, I wanted to. I wanted him to hate something I wrote, so he would write me a nasty note so I could be on the list.
He hated the fact he was having trouble getting a Word Balloon episode downloaded. So that happened, and I sent him a CD to make it easier for him.
You're a good man. No, I mean, I love the documentary about him. I mean, he was one of the ones that hits you where it's just. I'm of that age now where the generation above me is kind of disappearing, and you kind of hope they stay around because you're next, you know? Yeah. Just the idea of him sitting, smoking his pipe live on TV, writing a short story, and someone's still connected with that and alive. Yeah, it's sad he passed. My thing with Harlan is, this is a stupid thing. Can I tell you a stupid thing about Harlan? So when I was, again, this is going back, this is like high school, 15, 16. Entertainment Weekly did an all Star Trek issue. And they talked about, obviously Harlan wrote the best episode of Star Trek ever, City on the Edge of Forever. And it ended, and I didn't know who Harlan was back then, but it ended with sort of an extra of the behind the scenes of City on the Edge of Forever and why it went so wrong. Harlan walked away from it and hates that episode.
Yes, I know. Yes.
And there's a great IDW just did a great recreation of his original script.
Yes. J.K. Woodward painted that, actually.
Yes, J.K. Woodward's beautiful. It's my favorite thing that J.K.'s done. I have a J.K. piece above my wall right here. And so he wrote this extra, and in the extra he tells the behind the scenes story and kind of why he hates Shatner and why he hates Nimoy and why everything's terrible. You know, he was dyspeptic, and at the very end, I remember this so specifically as a kid. He's like, and now that I've said all that, that wasn't actually the truth. What actually happened was something much worse, but I'll never tell. And he just ended it there. And I remember he's like, what happened? What didn't you tell?
Was that one of his sci-fi editorials that he used to do on the Sci-Fi Channel?
It was just an article in EW from 30 years ago. Yeah, it was just something in the back of a Star Trek special that I poured over as a kid because I was a Star Trek nerd.
Okay.
And I was just like, well, you're just imagining. You're like, did you and Shatner go to some weird drug orgy? Like, what happened? Like, were you standing naked saying, I am the Eggman? And then he's like, we're taking the first 10 pages out of your script. Like, no.
Because he...
my imagination went wild with it.
He wrote a book before the IDW adaptation that included his original version of the script. And it had a big forward explaining, what frustrated him and everything. And you can find it. It's I want to say it was his publishing company, White Wolf, that put it out, and maybe White Wolf is in his company. But I remember buying it. It was a soft cover, like the size of a trade paperback.
I wonder if he told the truth then, or whether he just regurgitated the false story.
I'm not sure, actually, now that you say that. But no, it's and the IDW adaptation is fantastic and absolutely worth getting. Anytime JK paints a Star Trek story, it's in your best interest to get it because he clearly loves Star Trek. The Star Trek Planet of the Apes crossover was ridiculously good. And I'm still kicking myself that I didn't buy some of those limited prints that he had of Spock in an ape jail cell, or Shatner or Kirk and Nova together in a wagon hiding the way Charlton Heston and Taylor and Nova hide in a wagon. Just good crap like that. Ridiculous.
Yeah. I had a chance to buy a page from that JK book, and I didn't buy it because I was an idiot because it was too big. I was like, it won't fit on the wall. But I was involved. I have a Star Trek page on my wall. I have a Kurt Swan page from something him and Peter David did.
I had no idea Kurt Swan ever drew Star Trek. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I have a Kurt Swan Shatner from a beautiful story. Peter David did where he told the story backwards, and it was a story about Scotty, and like it was Scotty getting younger as he sort of went through this romance. I ripped it off for my first Grayson issue where I told the story backwards.
Yes,
so
I remember that. Yes.
I have a page of it up on my wall.
I have one Kurt Swan page. It's a Lois and Clark page that Tex, and now was it Tex Sullivan? I forget who is the last name of Tex, the inker. Tex Blaisdell. Tex Blaisdell, who was also a Kubert School teacher. So it wasn't a Murphy Anderson inked page, but it was. Tex Blaisdell's pretty cool too. And it's them at the Capitol in D.C., and they're in the commissary where you can get the navy bean soup that is so famous for the cafeteria of the Capitol. And I've had that. Have you had that experience? Have you eaten the navy bean soup?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes,
I figured as a Washingtonian that you've done that. And I guess, shame on me, Isaac Goodhart. I would have asked this when we were talking about Mr. Miracle, but maybe there's something in here that Tom hasn't addressed.
All right, hit me up. More questions.
Let's see. Well, first of all, you did say which came first, the idea to write about a depressed superhero, or was it that organic direction to take Mr. Miracle? I'll ask the rest of them, and you can tell me if there's something else that you can speak of here that we haven't already covered. What makes Mr. Miracle the perfect superhero for this kind of story? And then he says, this is my favorite book on the stands right now. Thanks, John. Keep up the great work. Isaac Goodhart, fine artist. He did Postal with your co-Batman writer, Brian, give me my middle name, Hill.
Yes.
What's Brian's other name?
Don't ask me hard.
All right, sorry, Brian. I apologize.
Brian Edward.
Brian Edward, I believe, is correct for 20 points. Let's now move on to Potent Potables
don't get me in trouble.
for 50. So
I met Brian. He's awesome.
That's excellent. I have to confess, I just bought the first 2 issues of his detective run, and I want to dive into it because I know he's a fine writer.
He opened his story with talking about Batman has a nightmare, which I want to ask him if that's a tribute to the Englehart run we were saying earlier, because my favorite panel of Batman ever is from the Englehart run where Batman wakes up in the middle of the night having a nightmare and he's like, I don't have nightmares, I give nightmares. My favorite Batman panel of all time.
That's awesome. So,
and I wonder if he dedicated it to. I've been meaning to text him.
That's excellent.
Yes, Mr. Miracle. Why is he the perfect character to tell this story? The thing about Mr. Miracle that makes him unique in looking at him is the pack, right? Like that's the genius behind all of Kirby's New God. Is this bizarre thing where basically the God and the devil trade children. And the son of God, the sort of Jesus allegory, is raised by the devil, and the son of the devil is raised by God. And the idea of Mr. Miracle sort of being given up by your father to be raised in hell and having that be your childhood. And then when you sort of come into life, your superpower, the focus of your life is escape. I mean, that's what you do. You perform escapes. That's your superpower. That's everything you do is about escapes. That obviously has to be tied into sort of the pain of that moment, the pain of being given up and the pain of living in torture and being raised in torture. So what a childhood like that, how that would impact a person is obviously sort of the story of Mr. Miracle, how he overcomes that or doesn't overcome it. And then that's the first half of Mr. Miracle. And of course, the second half of Mr. Miracle, just as important as that pain, is Barda, and looking at how he found love in the midst of that pain. It's funny. My stories have changed. I had one theme, and then I changed to a different theme. When I first started writing comics, when I did Vision, the sort of trilogy of good intentions, I call it. The Vision, Sheriff, and Omega Men. I was writing a lot of different stories in different genres, but it was basically the same story where it was like a person comes to a situation trying to do good and it all falls apart. And I think that was basically a metaphor for how I felt about my CIA experience, where I just had basically good intentions, but the world was much too complicated and things kind of fell apart. And that was like my theme I was doing over and over again. Then in April of 2016, I had this sort of panic attack thing I've talked about a lot. And since then, I'm writing this sort of themes over and over again, where I'm continually writing about sort of people who have pain in their life and how they use love to fight that pain. And you see that in Batman, you see that in Mr. Miracle. I'm sure you'll see that in Heroes in Crisis. And that's what made Mr. Miracle special, is both that he had the pain and the love, and how those two things go together and how they don't is sort of the theme of the book.
Very cool. Attaboy.
Kelly Sue put out a thing like name a writer and what their great theme was. And I was like, that's stupid. No one will name me and nail mine. Someone put Tom King. Work-life balance is tough, but you get through it if you love someone. I was like, that's pretty much it.
That's good. Absolutely. That's great.
Like,
there you go. Never mind about those 75 comic books I just read. Yeah, this guy gets it. All right, there you go.
Yeah, I was like, I got to be deeper. I got to think of something else.
Have you had a chance to meet Kelly Sue?
I had met her at this recent summit that you were talking to Brian about, which was a fascinating sort of exercise. And she was delightful. I mean, that's not a shock to say, but I mean, you expect her to be delightful, but she was also very insightful in terms of how stories work and in terms of what amazed me about her is her sort of understanding the power behind some of the cliches. Like, she's like, this is why this cliche exists. I mean, she like literally took me aside and was like, this is why you see this, and this is why it works this way. And I was like, oh my God, like blowing my mind. So yeah, she was utterly delightful. She was the best.
Surprised. Tell me how the writing, as much as you can, how the writing retreats have changed, if they've changed, from your first rebirth talks with whomever you had to what's going on now.
Well, it's hard to say they've changed because none of them have been the same.
Okay.
So it's not like there was like sort of a consistent drum beat and then like there was a cymbal. It was like the drums and then the guitar and then the cymbal. It was like there's not a pattern to break. I mean, like my first retreat was the DCYOU, so fondly remembered.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
And that was very big and corporate. Like, it was, they invited every single person and they wanted to impress us. So like we got tours of stuff, and it was, we went on the Warner Brothers lot and here's fancy things, and they got us all in a big lecture hall, and then they sort of made presentations to us, but not very interactive.
Okay.
In terms of sort of creators creating. I mean, you always have, I was the new guy. Like at that time, I just had Omega Man and half of Grayson. Yeah. And so I was like, just don't get fired. Just don't get fired. Just don't get fired.
I understand.
Like, if they ask you a question, your answer is don't get fired. But we didn't present our ideas. Maybe you met the most important thing that happened at that conference that I remember was taking Scott aside. Scott Snyder, didn't know him back then. And because I had just gotten, I was reading Scott's stories and seeing what a success they were, and I was like, how does he do this? Like, what could he tell me the secret of it? And I think I literally asked him that question because I'm so fucking subtle. I was like, what? How do you do it? And he was so kind and sort of he's like, in the first issue, I raised the stakes 1,000,000,000%. And he's like, and I tell my audience that this is what is at risk. And I was like, oh, and I mean, that changed how I'd already written Omega Man, but that if you look at Vision #1, you'll see Scott's influence on that page right there, where it was like, Vision #1 has a voice from the future that tells you, like, this is the stakes. This is how big this story is going to be. And I was like, that's how I literally stole that from Scott Snyder from that. So anyway, and then, subsequent to that, the conferences have been, sort of more like smaller events. Like, we'll have a back conference where we'll get together and do these sort of things. This was the first one. This was new. I feel it was more Marvel style. That's what everyone said. I've never been to a Marvel retreat, but where like the idea here was everyone present their ideas to everyone, so that's how a shared universe works. So everyone sort of knows what everyone's working on, so that we can have the moment where Thor flies in the background and is like, I'm off on my way to fight Odin because he's gone evil. And then Power Pack is like, oh, there's Thor. He's going to fight Odin. And they wave. So that was the concept, that if we all need to know each other's ideas so that we can combine these ideas into one great story. And it was good. It was eye-opening. I don't think I had come off of, I was in a week of nervous terror because I had done I went and did Seth Meyers and then Denver Con and then LA was next. And so I was like in my 5th city in 4 days. And so, and there was a fuck up with my flights, only 4 hours. And then I had to sort of present them with sort of my story ideas. And I don't think I did as good a job as I could have, because the ideas are solid. I was the unsolid.
Okay. All right. Mitch Gozer asks, when did you get the concept for the Nightfall of the Heart? Also, and you kind of answer this, but we'll see if there's more there. Also, where the heck did that term get coined? I saw it in a bunch of places, and I don't know who nicknamed it that.
That's the first I've seen it. I don't know.
Because, I mean, it sounds
good.
Clearly, as you explained, Bane's reason of existing is to break the bat. So I guess this story really is the Nightfall of the Heart.
Where did I get the concept from? I stole it from Frank Miller. Don't tell people that. This is just between you and me.
Is this Born Again, basically? Is this Kingpin's?
Yeah, and I love the idea of a villain going scratching at that thing in a superhero that he doesn't want scratched. Batman doesn't mind if you punch him in the face. Batman doesn't. But what's the point? And that's what Born Again was, where it's like, you're not even a fucking lawyer anymore.
Yeah.
You're nothing.
Yeah, you're nothing.
And how Daredevil responded to that. I've always thought it's the best ending in the history of comics. He shouldn't have signed it. It's just the best cliffhanger in the history of comics. And so I stole it from Frank Miller. But if anyone asks, I got it from numerous sources and created it all by myself too.
I love that first splash page after he breaks him, and he's clearly in some sort of hovel, just kind of like living almost like a homeless person, where he's sleeping on the floor and he's just completely disheveled and everything. God, I love Born Again. Born Again was ridiculously great. And every moment, God, when he saves, Karen's about to kill herself, and he shows up, and then they're just on their knees crying and everything. Oh my God!
They're like, Born Again makes me angry, and this is why Born Again makes me angry. There's probably 7 panels on which Captain America appears in Born Again, and it's the best Captain America story in the history of the medium. Captain America has been written for 80 years. He's as old as Batman, and 7 fucking panels as a side character in a Daredevil story are the best he's ever been.
When he's trying to get Nuke's information and and he's frustrated because he's like, I got to use a computer. It's like, I'm not an old man. I can do this. And you're right. I think Brubaker and I talked about it during his Cap run, where it is. Yeah, no, Frank Miller distilled, like you said, in 7 panels, exactly who Captain America is.
Yeah, he's like, why did he have to wear the flag? All the best lines. It's not about the thing. It's about the dream. Fucking Frank Miller. That guy's.
Have you had conversations since? Has he commented on your Batman at all?
Oh, Frank is like a friend now. He's like a legitimate friend. Like, I know him and talk to him and text with him. He's a genius of comics. If I had a Mount Rushmore of comics, it would be Frank Miller, Alan Moore, Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby. And the fact that I know one of them personally and I can hang out, and like I'm going to hang out with him next week at Comic-Con. Like, we've scheduled it. Like, me and Frank. That's my favorite Frank story. I'll probably tell this already, but I'm going to tell it. I like it so much. So last year, after the Eisners, John was with me at the Eisners.
Indeed. Me and Constance, yes, indeed.
Me and Constance. I went at these 2 awards, and I went to lunch the next day with Jim Lee and Frank Miller. And it was like the fancy restaurant in Comic-Con, and the Game of Thrones cast was sitting next to us at the next table, and I'm like trying to play it cool. But like, they less interest me to nerd out than Jim Lee and Frank Miller. I was like, oh my God, this is just a distillation of everything I love in life. And and I wasn't as close to. I knew Frank a little bit, but I wasn't like as close to him maybe as I am now. And Jim's trying to tell Frank why he's having a fucking meeting with this stupid writer, and so Jim's like, Frank, Tom won 2 Eisners last night, and Frank has a nice long pause, and he's like, I think I have 21. You have never so successfully seen a man just flop his dick out on the table and just be like, well, I guess I got a giant one. I don't know what happened.
That's awesome.
God was kind to me, Tom. I was like, okay, thanks. I'll put my little 2 over here.
Jesus. I'm going to continue to look and see if there are other questions here. Are we going to see a Green Arrow Batman crossover or a story where they partner up to defeat a bit villain? Says Sub Hamrocks or
no, not in the current plans. Although I think they make a good team. I'd like them to team up. But I don't have any current plans for that. What I want to see and what we're there used to be a grand tradition of the Flash and Green Lantern would cross over sort of once a year. And it was done for years and years and years and years and years. And we did that Flash Batman crossover, and I'd love to pay tribute to that Flash Green Lantern to sort of make it that into a tradition where Flash and Batman crossover.
And it's surprising they don't do it more because them both being police detectives in their own way and everything. And you wonder if you have more time to get into what Bruce thinks of Barry as a criminologist and everything. Does he respect him? Does he think he plays too much by the rules? I don't know. I don't know. Those are, I think, areas to be explored.
And they both have dead mothers, so they can mourn that. And
that's true, too. And again, in no surprise, Jeff Johns, that great moment in Flashpoint with Thomas's letter, which, again, piques our interest into what's to come of Flashpoint Batman and what he knows about his son. And what we saw, too, in the Button, of course.
Well, remember the last time we saw Thomas Wayne, he was in the Button, and he was saying, don't become Batman. That was the last thing he said to Bruce.
That's right. But
it wasn't the exact last. But it was in there. If anyone, while you're looking, I will pitch Josh Williamson. Flash 50 came out, and you should read the shit out of that because it is
excellent. Brilliant. I read it today. I bought it, and that was my first read of the pile, even before Superman 1. Dare I say it? Because I really wanted to know how things were going to get resolved, and they haven't been resolved. That's part of the beauty of Flash War. It has an ending, and it has a definite ending, but it opens up a new door for, I think, all 3 characters.
Yeah, so good. Josh is so good.
Yeah, man, he's. We finally have touched base to talk soon. I figured I'd wait till after Comic-Con. You're breaking my heart with all what you're going to do at Comic-Con stuff. I'm not going this year, so I won't see you.
No, you won't be on the boat. We have a boat.
Oh, man! Who's got a boat?
I have a boat.
Oh, that's fantastic. Me and Jeremy Hunt did that a few years ago. Go on. That's great.
We're doing a big... Oh, am I allowed to talk about this? Oh, who cares? We're doing a big Heroes in Crisis event, and it's going to be on this. It's going to be on a boat, and we're doing like a whole special. I can't. You'll see it when at Comic-Con because it'll stick out as something utterly unique. But I wish you would be there because.
Oh, me too, bud. Damn it. That's like a New York a couple of years ago where Ben is like, hey, come hang out. And me and Eddie Izzard. I'm like, oh, I can't go this year. I just had surgery.
But I'm going to Comic-Con.
Son of a...
I'm going to Comic-Con late this year because there's the All-Star game is in D.C. and I live in downtown D.C. not far from the stadium. So I got to take my stupid son to a baseball game on Tuesday. So
that's fantastic. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's excellent.
Whatever.
Oh, my God.
It's one of exactly. It's one of those things like your kid is 9. He's obsessed with baseball. The All-Star game is down the street. Are you not going to take him? What kind of father are you?
You're a good dad. That's fantastic. That's awesome, man. Dude, he's going to remember that for his entire life. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, he better remember.
You're a good dad. You're a good dad. No.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. No. That's beautiful,
yeah, so
man. Huge.
I'm going usually I come in on Tuesday, so I'll be on Wednesday this year. My schedule is packed. I don't think there's a free moment in my entire schedule from Wednesday to Sunday night. I now stay over Sunday night because this can't possibly be a secret because I usually leave Sunday afternoon, but last year I discovered there's like the
Dead Dog Party.
A Dead Dog Party. Do you know about this?
I do know about the Dead Dog Party. I've had the pleasure. It's a fantastic thing. Yes, indeed.
I went to it for the first time last year. It was the most fun. It
is fun.
If so, I don't know if people know, but it's been running for 30 some odd years, and it's comic creators of the last 30 years sort of getting together to celebrate that you sort of made it through Comic-Con. And so you go, and there's like last year, I remember I sat down at a table, and like my table was me, Dan DiDio, Bill Sienkiewicz, and Walt Simonson, and we were just sitting there having like, hey,
yay, thanks. That's beautiful. That's excellent. Yep.
Yeah, and you just sit and obviously I love old time comics, and I just sit there and I just listen to the stories about old comics, and it's the best time I had a comic con last year. So
I hear you, man. No, it's a great party. It's a terrific.
Incredibly looking forward to just that, to hearing. I like old stories about how Mort Weisinger was an asshole. They're just the best.
Yeah, no, agreed. And my few encounters with Paul Levitz. No, those are the kind of stories. Or whenever I get to hang with Marty Pasco, I always pump him for Bronze Age information and stuff, and what it was like during his time at DC. And same with Walter for that matter. Simonson's amazing that way too. Good stuff, man. Hilarious. Here's a good one. Scary, I'm assuming is how you say your name there, and it's a woman, I believe. How hard was it for you to write issue 50 for your Batman run? And also, she wants to know, will you be at Los Angeles Comic Con this year?
I will not be at Los Angeles Comic Con. I'm sorry. I'm doing 11 cons this year, and it's way too many already. And I probably will cut back next year just because I'm not getting enough family time. I just want to make sure I get enough time with the kids.
Sure.
If you do, I try to do one a month, which seems doable when I do it, but the one a month means you don't. Every third weekend you're away, which is it's a lot.
Totally.
What was the first part of the question? I got straight.
How hard was it for you to write issue 50 for your Batman?
Oh, it's hard as fuck. It was a hard issue to put together.
Sure.
Which makes me all the more mad that it got spoiled because, God, we worked so hard on that issue. The reason it was hard was because before any of all that stuff about the covers and all that, the idea that we were going to create an issue that was a celebration of Batman, and the way we were going to do this was to get 20 of the best artists who'd ever worked on Batman to draw pages again, and not just to do them as pinups in the back, but to incorporate them into the story.
Yep.
And how that could all work was just technically very difficult because you're dealing with 20 different egos and 20 different people and 20 different schedules, and when I see people, I mean, this is the first time Frank Miller's been in a Batman book since year one. This is the first time Jim Lee's been in a Batman book since Hush, I think. It's first time Paul Pope's been in the main book, bringing Tim Sale back into the book. I mean, these were huge names, and then half of them were people who had done historic runs on the books. People like Becky Cloonan, the first woman to ever draw Batman, and then the other half. Were sort of people to celebrate that we had gotten through these 50 issues. It is, I know, I live a very gifted life, so but to me it was an accomplishment to put out 50 issues of Batman double ship, have them all sell over 100,000, so that there was, that's just never been done before. I'm bragging. I'm sorry. I hate to brag, but and we wanted to sort of celebrate that. And so we got all the artists that we'd worked on to get these 50 issues out, to get a page of each of them in there. So that combination and making sure it was part of the story. And then so that was half of it. And the other half of it was working with Mikkel so that every page in the book, besides the first and the last, is a parallel page. That's hard to write too. So like the left page parallels the right page. And the same with the splashes. So write in that method where you knew if you did a story about Catwoman, it had to be this many panels arranged in this way, and a story about Batman, it had to be this many panels arranged in that way, and to make sure the parallels were annoying but kind of cool. So it was just generally a technically hard issue to write. The lucky thing about the whole thing is that my wife has green eyes. So if you read the issue, a lot of it is about Catwoman's eyes and describing them and how they work and how they describe that person, and that's just me talking about my wife. So that was the easy.
That's awesome.
That was the easy. I got lucky there. And I wish I had pure blue eyes like Bruce, but I don't. So yeah, it was hard. Not as difficult as it was to write. It was more difficult to sit there for those 4 days and have everyone hate it. That was the hardest part for me.
I understand, bud. Yeah.
But
well,
that's okay.
Well, here's a two-part question from Fioretin, and that's the Twitter handle. What are you most interested in writing after Batman? I don't know if you can answer that or not. Also, any chance we'll see more Robins appearing in Batman? I think I know the answer to that.
Yes. First questions first. What am I interested in writing after Batman? I think so. I'm going to be having Batman in 2 years. And
2 more years.
Two more years. I think I'm going to radically restructure sort of my workload in life. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to change sort of things.
Interesting.
Just in terms of how much I work on this and how much I work on that. I have this TV thing that keeps inching forward. I don't really... I kind of don't want it to inch forward because I like writing comics more than TV. But if it keeps inching forward, it's going to need more of my time at some point.
Is this Sheriff of Babylon or something?
No,
different?
It's something completely different. I'm writing this TV show that keeps getting, like you just keep waiting for that Hollywood moment where they're just like, no, it's not going to happen. But you just, so you don't pay attention to it, but it keeps moving. I don't know. Anyways, I'm lucky to be on it.
Interesting. That's great. I assume you can't say more than that about it.
No, I can't say anything more than that. It'll be announced. So, well, if that,
fingers crossed.
No, I don't know if it's fingers crossed. I'm not sure I want it to happen. I like writing comics. I don't love writing TV, but it's hard to resist sort of that medium,
Sure.
It just because of the audience and the the potential,
the freedom.
I don't know, the potential of. I feel like modern, like when I remember watching Mad Men, and being like, "Oh, this is what novels are. This is what novels should be." That the whole culture talking about something that's trying to touch something deep. Same with like The Wire and shows like that. So you want to try to do that?
Sure.
Yes. So I think after Batman, I'm gonna. I mean, I'll probably change this all in 2 years. Who knows how things will work out? But I'm gonna do something different. I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna go back on sort of a monthly book or not. I don't know. But listen to this in 2 years and be like, oh, Tom's full of shit. He immediately took over Green Arrow or something.
Josh Sapien asks, where is Sheriff of Babylon 2? I think you've answered this before in previous podcasts, but for Josh's purposes, I'll let you answer it.
Sheriff of Babylon 2 is on my computer in my hard drive. It's written. And the only person who will ever draw Sheriff will be Mitch Gerads, who I'm currently doing Mister Miracle with. And so we have to finish Mister Miracle first, and then we'll see what happens to Sheriff after that. So I think season 2 is much better. I think season 1 maybe the best thing I ever wrote, and I think season 2 is better. So hopefully that comes out soon.
Jimmy Dunn, if you could bring one Marvel character into DC continuity to use in your Batman run, who would it be?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
My favorite Marvel character is The Thing. I wish I could write him. I love that character. I love the idea that he's too ugly to quit. Just like you can't keep it down. He's just too ugly to quit. So
that's interesting.
I don't think like there's something scrappy and street level about him that doesn't. There's no DC equivalent of that character. There's no So I guess The Thing. I don't think is there.
It's interesting. Yeah.
The DC characters are so. I mean, it was just such a shocker to say this, but they're so lofty. They're much more perfect than Marvel characters.
Absolutely.
And that's a product of. I mean, I have a whole theory about this.
Tell me.
Have I told you my theory on this?
No, tell me.
So this might be completely not true. So if this is not true, nobody listen to it. But I'm going to say it out loud anyways. If you talk to Neil Adams about like. Because if you look at comics and Neil and Steranko are the only people that were hired in comics for 20 years. That's why there's a generation of artists that's just them, 2 people.
Yes.
And because in the 50s, what happened to comics, obviously everyone knows, is that they were incredibly on the rise, and they sort of came into this cultural moment where everyone's like, they have too much power over our children, and they're making these incredibly edgy stories, right?
Right.
It's very urban stories, very bloody stories, and very cutting edge stories. And because of those, the whole industry got slapped across the face, basically. And it was as there was an ethnic component, because this was largely an industry of Jews, right? There was an ethnic component of it. It's like, it's almost like it was a little anti-Semitic. It was like, you're too Jewy almost. It's you go back. You need to create small, simple stories. And
I know what you're saying. Go on.
And
let's angle these people up a little.
Yeah,
bit,
it was. Yeah, it was. Like,
I understand.
It was this idea that, and that you couldn't. It almost took like, you guys are writing about too much pain and agony. You need to make people. I mean, to the point where like the comics code was like, every story the bad guy has to suffer, and like there are actual like rules that like this has to be in. And comic book creators were literally scared, not like they were literally scared that they would lose their lives and wouldn't be able to feed their children unless.
Well, yeah, this was during McCarthyism, when a Senate hearing committee would make you shit your pants and make you think my career might be on the line if I do the wrong thing.
Yeah, and they made comics such. I mean, you can talk to Neil about this. They made it so that if you were at a cocktail party, saying "I write comics" was the same as like today saying, "I'm one of the guards who separates children from their mothers." It's like, it was like
sure.
It was like I'm one of the problems with America.
I'm a pornographer. I write porn.
Yeah, it was like you didn't admit it. Stan Lee writes about this, that he would just tell people that he would be at a party, like, "What do you do for this?" "I'm a writer." And when they'd ask the next question, he'd change the subject.
Yep.
So now during that time, that was the most fertile period for DC to create sort of its backbone of B-list characters, not the A-list guys. Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman came kind of before that. But the B-list guys, the Aquaman, Barry Allen, the Silver, what constitutes the beginning of the Silver Age, Hal Jordan,
certainly,
the Challengers of the Unknown, Adam Strange, and those guys are cookie cutter white dudes with very little problems. Yes. And to me, it reads, when you read those comics, and they're brilliant comics, man, Carmine Infantino could draw, and they're brilliantly done. But they're not characters who are experiencing pain. They're not characters who are experiencing doubts. They're not characters. They're gods on. They're as perfect as these people can be because they're trying to be perfect examples to perfect young children because the writers are scared of losing their jobs. That's, I think. That maybe not be true, but that's just a speculation. And that was the most fecund part. We're still that's the base of DC Comics, are those years where now you advance that 7 years and you're in 1962, and Stan Lee and Jack Kirby make their characters, and because Stan Lee was like, fuck it, because he was 40 and thought he was about to lose his job, and Jack Kirby is a crazy person, God bless him, they made characters who felt pain and guilt in a way that sort of DC Comics didn't, and they seemed more human because they weren't writing in that sort of scared way. They were writing a little bit outside of that box, not 100%, but a little bit outside of that box.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the difference between the two companies. It's like one was created in the midst of in the midst of that fright, and one was just breaking out of it.
Agreed.
And
no, I like that.
Sorry, that's a theory. That might be totally false. I'm sure Stranko's going to listen and be like, "You don't fucking know."
I guarantee you Steranko does not listen to the podcast. He does know who I am, but he does not listen to the podcast. But that said, I always felt Busick in JLA and Avengers with Perez when the Marvel heroes come to the DC universe and they're on the DC Earth and they're like, everything's so clean. What? They're just freaked out about how clean the place is and everything. And it's true. I think that those are apt descriptions of why they're different. And certainly, I do agree that Marvel, the Marvel superheroes were kind of a reaction to what was out there, and let's do it a little differently. And because even as much as you can find similarities between the Challengers and the Fantastic Four, There's a big difference there.
Well, I mean,
and I think, and like you said, I mean, they're living with their mutations, the four, rather, the Challengers are living on borrowed time, but they seem to be handling it pretty well. I don't know if they're going to wind up in, your crisis book. Anyone's been in my house, like you've all been in my house, but anyone who comes to my house, I decorate my bathrooms with cut-out comic strips, Sunday comic strips. I cut them out of books and put them in frames and decorate them so the walls are sort of covered with comic strips. And one of my favorites is a Bloom County where something happens and Sir Opus is embarrassed. And it has underneath, there's like commentary because it's from one of those books, and it has Berkeley Predator Breathe, I don't know. He says, what I like about this strip is you can see my naked anxiety on this page because I have this exact fear, and that's why this is funny. And he's like, when I read Peanuts, I see Sparky Schultz, anxiety on every page. But he's like, when I read Doonesbury, I have no idea what Gary Trudeau is afraid of. Interesting. That's very interesting.
And I think of that, like when I read Flash 50 or Showcase 4, like that's a brilliant fucking comic book. But there is nothing in there that tells me what Bob Kanigher's craziness is. And Bob Kanigher was a crazy motherfucker. But when you read Fantastic Four 1, you see Stan Lee's kookiness in it. Like you see his anxiety, you see his nervousness, you see himself putting himself into those characters. And that's why Marvel has sort of that more humanity in it, because they were allowed to be more human in the beginning.
That's interesting. And I will say that I feel that way about the superhero books. And I'm not sure exactly when, but it did seem like the war books had a little bit more the DC war books had a little bit more going on where they were a little more in touch with their feelings or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just projecting that on. I don't know how much of you've read G.I. Combat or some of the others. Well, I've read our Army at War.
Well, that's also all Bob Kanigher. Yeah, so you can see more of the Bob Kanigher stuff in that stuff, I think, if you look, especially when it goes on. But even if you look at that stuff compared to what Kurtzman did over in Two-Fisted Tales,
yes,
it's pale in comparison.
Agreed. No, you're right about that. That's true.
So, although it's drawn, I mean, God, those men. I mean, Joe Kubert. No one draws better than Joe Kubert.
I was about to say Russ
and Russ Heath.
Russ Heath, yes, good Lord. No, those guys, and even God, I always forget. But I had two encounters with Joe Kubert, and one of them I had a war comic with me, and I believe, oh God damn it, was it Don Newton? I can't even remember who the artist was, but I was like, I'm really not sure. It kind of looks like it might be Jim Aparo. It kind of looks like it might be whatever. And literally like 5 seconds, Kubert just looks like Don Newton. I'm like, thanks, man. And I don't think it was Don Newton, unfortunately. I wish I could remember specifically, but those artists were incredible, and the covers. Good. I bought a bunch of worn out, 10-cent late 50s DC war comics purely for the Kubert covers, and they're so beautiful. They're so amazing, and really, my intent is to eventually frame them and stuff. I haven't yet. I've got two Nick Cardy Aquaman covers. One of them, the classic Black Manta cover, and just that whole period of Cardy when he really got experimental, and because of course the old fogey DC guys thought that the DC checks were very mod and upbeat and very very modern, but really Nick Cardy really cut loose for a year or two on Aquaman and Teen Titan covers that are just so spectacularly of the moment
100%.
From an art style. You know what I'm saying.
When my little guy, he's 4 now, but when he was 1 or 2, he used to love to go through the Paul Levitt's giant DC book and just look at the pictures. It was one of the things.
Sure.
And that's how he learned his letters. He would Superman was S. He'd be S for Superman. And we got to Aquaman, Q, and the old Aquaman was shaped like a fish. So he would be fish, Q, fish, which had nothing to do with each other, but it was the most adorable thing. So I bought that comic and I have it up in my office just to always sort of remind me of my little kid pointing. He was so obsessed with Aquaman, the little Q fish from Nick Cardy covers. Sorry, that story has nothing to do with anything. But do you know who I met? Who you have to have on your show?
Tell me.
Joe Giella.
I would love to have Joe Giella on the show, and he's going to be at, I believe, Terrificon in Connecticut, and I do intend, and I'm reasonably certain he will be there. This Terrificon, I'm sorry you're not going to be there at Mohegan Sun for a moment, and I know, folks, I am running the commercial for it. You got to go to the website and see the classic creators that are going to be there. The easy ones are guys like Roy Thomas and Don McGregor.
I met Roy Thomas once. It did not go well.
Aw, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to. I've met him at cons, and he's always been very nice. And Brian actually introduced me to him after a panel with him and Ramita Jr.
Wow.
And they were all together and everything. And I know Johnny. Johnny's a great guy, and he's always been sweet to me as well. But no, I would love to meet Giella because, he's one of those great Silver Age inkers that was so important for the DC look and everything. And So wasn't he with Infantino? And if not, certainly of that era.
He was Infantino's guy. Yeah, he did all those classic Batman and new look covers.
Yeah, exactly. Silver Age Batman at its best, and like you said, new look Batman with the yellow when they flipped over and finally created the yellow insignia and everything. So I was, as you might have heard because you told me you heard the Bendis tapes. I couldn't think of Dick Sprang's name the other day.
I was yelling at you. I was like, should I tweet it at him? I was like, it's Dick Sprang.
Well, like I said, I know people who are listening are like, "You idiot! How do you forget Dick Sprang?" I love Dick Sprang.
I did a not at all subtle Dick Sprang joke in the War of Jokes and Riddles, where Joker has to just randomly go to a place and he goes to 6969 Dick Sprang Avenue just as a joke. I am not a subtle writer, as well.
That was great in 50. You had all the creator streets in there and everything. That was awesome.
I had a ton. I put my favorite Batman writers in there. So there was Englehart and Conway and
O'Neill,
and Ween.
Have you met Denny yet?
I met Denny before I heard. There's some Denny stuff that's going to come up that I'm not allowed to talk about, but yes, I met. He was the nicest guy. I saw him
He's amazing.
I saw me and my buddy CK were just walking through a con. He was sitting there. Nobody was at his table. It was ridiculous. And we walked up and we said hello to him. And we had just been talking to a creator who was being such a dick to us. And so we were like, man, creators are dicks. It was before I was in the industry and I really knew they were all dicks. But no, I'm just kidding. And we went up to, and he was as gracious and as just wonderful and warm and cool and warm. And
he's the best. He's the best. His son Larry asked me at the end of last year, let's do a new talk with Denny. And I'm like, oh, God, please. And, when Denny's autobiography came out, we did the interview.
Yes.
In February. And he's going to be at Terrificon. And I can't wait to see him because it had been years in between that I haven't seen him face-to-face since a New York con, probably in 2009 or 2010, somewhere in that area. But always such a gentleman and, just a great guy. And truly, as you know, you're younger and everything. Those Silver and Bronze Age guys, they were my childhood storytellers. And it really, Elliot Maggin and Marty Pasco. And I really have to talk to DC Publicity and find out how to get in touch with Cary Bates. Because Cary Bates, not only his wonderful Flash run, but also truly one of the great Superman and Justice League writers as well.
Yeah.
And I love his stuff. And man, did you read that story he did? He did in Elseworlds a couple years ago that was what if the entire L family made it to Earth?
No, I didn't read
So it's Jor-El, Lara, and baby Kal-El.
I have it.
And
I have that on my shelf. I haven't read it.
It's so good. It is so good. And it really is a very smart story and I think stands with any modern story. It is not like, oh, look at this old fogey or anything. It is a really smart, clear, very interesting what if Superman story went this way instead. Yeah, I love it. It really flew under the radar because I think did they finally collect it into a trade?
I think I have it as a trade. I think I do. Somewhere on my shelf.
I'm going to have to look up on Amazon or eBay and see if I can find it.
I get boxes of DC Comps now, and I feel like I saw that, and I was like, oh, this must be an old carry. I didn't realize it was just from a few years ago. All right, well, I'll have to read it now.
Yeah, well, now that I think about doing the math, it's probably from like 2010 or something like that, or 11. But it's incredible. It's definitely pre-Flashpoint. Definitely for pre-Flashpoint. And again, was always in Elseworlds. But, that's one of my favorites. I'm looking at... Go ahead.
I just saying, I have found in sort of when I when I want to relax and read some Batman comics, the ones that I keep going back to are the Conway ones and the Ween ones. There's just something
very cool. And two other great guys, and I've had the pleasure of talking to Len, and Jerry's been on the show a couple times, and I had Len very briefly on the show a couple times, where literally they were convention 10-minute like moments. But I love Jerry Conway. Good Lord, he's incredibly brilliant and still has it. I mean, his Last Days of Animal Man story was fantastic. His Spider-Man Renew Your Vows has been great. I've enjoyed that. I'm really glad he's back to writing comics. He's a wonderful creator, and very very smart dude. I like I said, Elliot Magan as well. Love these guys. They I think can still write their asses off when when they're asked to and when they're able to. They're tremendous.
So Conway's been writing your favorite Law and Order episodes for the last 20 years. So
yeah, that's exactly right. And I believe Murder, She Wrote, or Diagnosis Murder, which I did watch because it's I heard Dick Van Dyke, and this is 20 years ago. He did one of those Television Academy oral history interviews, and they're like, "So Diagnosis Murder, what brought you back?" He's like, "Well, Fred Silverman said, think of it as Rob Petrie as a senior citizen," and I'm like, I would watch a television show with Rob Petrie. I love Rob Petrie. And that is kind of how he played the doctor on Diagnosis Murder. And I'm like, I like Dick Van Dyke. I forgot how much I like him. Because I thought, all right, it's another show for senior citizens. I'm not interested. And it's kind of cheesy here and there, but it's delightful. And there's, and also they, much like comic books, had a lot of experimental fun. Like, Mannix, it's tough to watch now. I'll admit it. But as a little kid, Mannix was, absolutely my jam. I loved that show. And it's funny, like Seinfeld, what are you, Mannix? And it's true. He was just this all-action guy who got shot all the time. And he's on this one episode of Diagnosis Murder. Mike Connors comes back as Joe Mannix. And they even incorporate old footage from a 70s episode into the new story. And Joe Mannix is still like a senior citizen detective, still getting shot. And Dick Van Dyke is admonished. He's like, Joe, you really put yourself out there too much. You're not a young guy. You're going to have a heart attack in the field if you're not careful, Joe. And it's true. It's like totally Joe Mannix being an old man. It was like watching a Slam Bradley episode. It really was. There's a lot of symmetry between Slam Bradley and Joe Mannix. Slam Bradley, there's one question for me. Are you going to bring him in at all into the story?
No current plans. I don't even know how old Slam Bradley is in current continuity. Is he still the old? No current plans for Slam. I should bring him back.
Yeah.
I didn't answer your question. Yeah, I do. I love that. Yeah, the stuff with Darwin Brubaker too. It was amazing. I forgot to answer. So he asked if any Robins are coming. Nightwing is coming into the cave.
Yes, indeed.
Batman, it's just going to be Dick and Bruce again for a little while. For the next few, I mean, the idea is, it's like such a simple idea, but it's like when when you lose the love of your life, sometimes your best friend moves in with you to just sort of make sure you're okay.
Sure.
And that's the idea. It's sort of Dick comes back to the cave just to make sure Bruce is, Bruce is okay. And I'm doing a special sort of, if anyone's who's sort of followed by Run, I sometimes do these sort of spotlight issues on sort of one relationship, like I did with the annual with Bruce and Catwoman, and I did with Superman and Batman. And I'm doing one that's about Dick and Bruce, and it's with Matt Wagner's doing the art for it. So
wow,
yeah,
that's going to be an annual or just one of the issues?
It's issue 54. So 51 through 53 are Lee Weeks. They're the most beautiful comics you will buy all year. That's a guarantee. If you disagree with me, you may call me up and I'll send you a fucking check. 51 through 53 are the most beautiful comics you will read all year. And with Lee Weeks, with Elizabeth Brightweiser doing the colors. And
lovely.
And then 54 will be Matt Wagner's coming on to do a sort of spotlight issue on the relationship between Bruce and Dick. And the idea, I probably shouldn't tell you what it's about, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The idea is we're going to do sort of a parallel of two different time periods in Bruce's life, and one is going to be sort of that moment right after Dick's parents died, when Bruce is sort of trying to get Dick to talk about what happened to him, and Dick kind of refuses. And then we sort of do a parallel of that, of the opposite, where Dick is trying to get Bruce to talk about what happened. And so we sort of learn how the lessons of the father are passed to the son, kind of thing. So
that's beautiful. That's actually
with Matt, it's a one shot, Bruce and Dick, and sort of they're getting way deep into their relationship with Matt Wagner drawing it. I don't know. It's one of the issues I'm most proud of the run. So hopefully,
Matt is one of the, and I say this every time it comes up, one of the unsung great Batman creators.
Oh,
that when he is whether it's only art, but especially his retelling of those early Batman stories as he did them, Trinity, things like that. He just gets it, and I love Matt. Matt's was an early connection for me in my word balloon years, and it was so flattering that he was willing to talk to me. And it's been far too long since I've had him on. I wanted to wait till Mage finishes, and Mage, and yeah, I'll have Matt back. But no, every time Matt is doing something, he has my full attention. His Spirit run was great. Everything he's done, and it's always been a pleasure having Matt on Word Balloon, and he will be back.
Yeah, he's an amazing storyteller. Yeah, I highly recommend. I just read it again. The Grendel Batman crossover. It has not aged a bit, and it is scary and brilliant.
Yes,
if you're just looking for a great Batman story, it's 2 issues long. The Grendel Batman crossover. Was
it only because there was the Hunter story, and then there was and I forget her name, the female Grendel.
Maybe this is just part 1 that I read, but this was a complete story, and it was 2 oversized issues, like 2 40-page issues.
And he had Hunter's skull in the Batcave as a trophy.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is awesome and creepy.
That's weird.
Good stuff, man. Well, I was going to say I think we've reached the 3-hour limit. If you want to wrap up, I'm sure you're wiped out.
That is very long. I'm sorry.
Is there anything? Do you want to wrap up? It's up to you, buddy. I mean, I want to let you.
Is there anything else? Any more questions? We get them all.
We didn't get them all, but I think we got the best ones. Let's see here, because a lot of them were like the backlash, in terms of dealing with the spoilers that happened. Why did Batman pray beside Joker in 49 and say only Amen? And how did Catwoman heal so fast between issues 49 and 50? That's from Comic Boom, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a great question. I like that one. He prayed beside him because Batman, to his utter stupidity and will never understand why, respects every life, even Joker's life. So Joker put a gun to his head and said, "I will kill myself unless you sit down." And Batman had just watched Joker blow the head off of a woman and knew he was a little serious and a little crazy. And to save Joker's life, why Batman wants to save Joker's life is the deepest question in comics. But to save Joker's life, he did what he did temporarily. Now you say that's not the best version of Batman. That's not the toughest version. That's not the hardest version. And yeah, that's what I was trying to get across. As he got closer and closer to this marriage, he was becoming a little less and less Batman. Why was Catwoman recovered by 50? That's because there was to me, that in my mind there was like a 6-month gap between 49 and 50. I feel like the events of Metal happened between those 2 things.
Oh, interesting.
We could put a caption there and said that, but I just didn't want to throw people off. But in my mind, there was a big 6-month gap between those 2 issues.
Very
At least how I wrote it.
And now I had one other slightly interesting question, and I'm trying to find it now. Here it is. Well, I don't know if you want to reveal this or not, and I don't know if it spoils the end of Mr. Miracle, but I'll ask it anyway.
I will not reveal the end of Mr. Miracle.
Of course not.
There's only 3 people that know the end of Mr. Miracle, and one of them is not Mitch Gerads. So it's my editor, my wife, and me who know the end of Mr. Miracle.
Daniel Gonzalez asks, will Mr. Miracles, he put it in plural, this is because it is plural because he didn't put the apostrophe in there. Will Mr. Miracle's trauma from his series be part of Hero in Crisis?
That is a good question, and it touches on the end of Mr. Miracle, so I can't answer it, but it's a great question.
Also, wasn't Bug the Forager already dead?
Look, clearly something's going on in Mr. Miracle because it's in a continuity book, but it doesn't seem to match up with continuity.
Yep.
Now, does that mean that's there's a lot of options for that could be. Does that mean that Darkseid is manipulating him? Does that mean it's this Jacob Slatter scenario where he just died in the first one? Does that mean he's just gone crazy and he's bonkers and imagining the whole thing? Does that mean he's trapped in hell? Does that mean he's trapped in heaven? That's what the end of the book is about. I mean, obviously there's a mystery here of why this doesn't add up to continuity, but the whole book is in continuity, and the fact that it's in continuity is important to that book.
Excellent. All right. And again, this is why each time I read another chapter of Mr. Miracle, I have a good headache in terms of I have no idea what the hell's happening, but I'm really enjoying it.
I say people always say to me, like, I don't know what's going on. I think that refers to, like, I don't know whether this is a dream or not. You can ignore that aspect of the story and just focus on there's a war between Apocalypse and New Genesis, and there's two people who are in love, and that's what's going on. That's the important part.
Yes, but it is all the window dressing that does make it interesting as well, and trying to crack the code here as we go along. So no, Tom, you're doing great. And truly the reason why Brian and I talked about you for 10 minutes at the beginning of the last podcast is I'm sure Brian, as a fellow writer, appreciates what you're doing. As someone who was introduced to you by Tom Fowler, goddamn, 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, Fowler's the best. Fowler taught me how to write comics. Tom Fowler. Tom Fowler's now doing a Vertigo book, so he's doing the Book of Magic. So read the shit out of that because Tom Fowler is one of the best storytellers in the history.
Amen, and long overdue. And I love talking to him. He Somni retweeted. I don't know if you saw it. This great picture I had of Somni, Fowler, and Norton.
Oh my goodness! I thought this was the same person.
It's the 3 stages of man. It's like Norton's the caveman. Fowler's like, all right, we're slowly getting civilized, but not quite there yet. And then you got Somni, and Somni's like your modern man. He's so much tinier, but he looks more evolved.
The first time I met Fowler was at New York Comic Con 2012, 13, whatever. And we had, obviously chatted on the phone or whatever. And I was like, I want to meet you in person to get dinner. He's like, great. I'll be in Artist Alley in the aisle F. I was like, well, how do I know it's you? He's like, I have a beard. I was like, oh, great. So I'm an idiot. I didn't know. So I show up, and like every single comic creator in 2012 has a beard. He does not mention that he's like a 6'10" giant man. That is clearly the most Tom Fowler part of Tom Fowler, besides his genius, is the fact that he's so super tall. And I was like, where is this beard? Oh, it's above me.
Norton and Fowler are like the Earth 1 and Earth 2 versions of each other.
Yes.
I love that about them. And they're great guys, and they both make me laugh a lot every time I talk to them.
I got to work with Norton. He did he did 8 pages for Mister Miracle.
Yes.
And that will appear. It was in the director's cut, and it's sort of a retelling of the origin of the story. And in the trade for Mr. Miracle, which hopefully will be a forever trade, that will be the first 8 pages that anyone who doesn't know the complicated history of the New Gods gets a little Mike Norton primer on it before the story starts. So he's it was a pleasure to have him on the book, and it's kind of a fulfillment of 13 years of knowing the dude.
That's awesome, man.
13
years.
Oh my God, I'm so
13 years of what?
Well, I'm forgetting the first time I heard Norton, like on the Crankcast. Was that like 13 years ago? I guess 2006. Yeah. Oh my God, we're so old.
Yeah,
we're so old.
I know, man. No, I know. Word Balloon's starting its 14th year, and the 24-hour podcast around comics, me and the Crankcast.
Yeah, I remember
all together, and Scotty and Scotty's wife Casey. It was those were the days. It's so funny. I forget who I was telling Slot on the Spider-Man exit interview that and I didn't name names, but I will now because it's no big deal. But Niesman, formerly of Around Comics, was with 11 O'Clock Comics for years.
Of course.
And they got into this very heated discussion about Slot's Spider-Man run. And Niesman's just like, well, it's another Spider-Man run, whatever. And the other 3 guys are just like, actually, it's really incredible, and you're obviously not reading it because when it's done, you're going to, Dan is going to have to be part of the discussion of Roger Stern and, the other great Spider-Man writers, Bendis and others, in terms of, if we really want to look at the entire, oeuvre of Spider-Man stories, it's like
100%.
Better be it. Yeah, man, he's got to be in the discussion, and you really have to examine what he put Peter through in 100 plus issues. No, it's amazing. So yeah, it was really funny. And, Dan was sympathetic to Chris and everything, and rightfully so. And I didn't mean to put, Chris on the spotlight, but it was kind of interesting. It's like, no, actually, Chris, you're probably not paying attention. And that's okay. Nobody can read everything. But, yeah, it was just really funny how the other three guys actually, Dan's really good.
I would not be in comics today if it wasn't for Chris Niesman, because Around Comics was my first podcast that drew me into comics, and it was my favorite podcast of all time, and I'm sad it doesn't exist anymore. Chris, Sal, and Tom Caters, the brilliant, maybe the most brilliant of all the early podcasters. He was the genius.
Oh, he's funny as hell. He, somebody online was talking about trying to find new comic book podcasts, and someone's like, I really like this Jimmy Olsen podcast. It's got to be Tom's. It has to be.
Yeah.
Because it was so funny and then he went through The Flash as well.
Yeah. And
Tom versus The Flash.
And JLA. And Tom versus JLA.
Oh, that's right. Tom versus JLA. That's right. Crazy stuff. There you go. Podcast history.
There you go.
So, dude, as always, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, John. You're still my favorite comic book podcast. I listen to you constantly. You're wonderful. And
that's very nice.
And I want to end because I don't do very many podcasts anymore. If you listen for 3 fucking hours, you must be a very nice person. Thank you for supporting me. This was a tough week if you were a Tom King fan, and I cannot say how much I appreciate you put food on my children's table. And it's just thank you, listeners, and thank you, readers, for doing it all. Man, I'm humbled by everything.
Hey, man, you're doing great work. Keep the hits coming. And once Heroes in Crisis gets going, maybe that'll be the time for a new Tom King conversation.
Well, I hope so. I hope that's any good.
If you've got time.
I can tell you I'm proud of how it looks. I don't know how it's written.
Well, we're all excited for it. So now keep up the great work. And as always, thanks for playing tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Tom King, I hope you enjoyed it. This was another edition of Word Balloon Unconventional. That will continue through next week during Comic-Con. I'm releasing this on Friday, so if you're getting it later than Friday, you'll understand why I'm saying next week instead of this week. What the hell's going on? More great conversations, some mock panels, if you will, with some really interesting people that will be at Comic-Con. They have panels to talk about, but I wanted to give you that Comic-Con experience through Word Balloon. I'm not going to be there this year. First one I've missed since 2009. How about that, man? 9 years straight. But that's okay. I'm going to go to Terrificon in the fall, as I've said, or in August, Mohegan Sun. Really looking forward to that. Just got the panels. I will tell you about those in the next episode. But very excited about what's coming in the days and weeks ahead right here on Word Balloon. I think you'll be enjoying the conversations that are to come. Hope you enjoyed today's. It was brought to you by, again, the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you very much, League, for your wonderful support through Patreon. Truly appreciate it. Again, if you would like to subscribe to Word Balloon, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon. Retrace the steps of the first 50 issues of Batman by ordering some trades from InStockTrades.com. You can get I Am Suicide, Volume 2. It picks up after I Am Gotham. And this is kind of the start of what's going on with Bane and the Psycho Pirate and Gotham Girl and the rest. Start going through these like the Zapruder film. Volume 2 is 42% off, $9.85. You can get the Rebirth Deluxe Collection. Easy for me to say. Book 1. This is it just the collection of I Am Gotham? I'm looking here. No, it's the first 15 issues. So you get Batman Rebirth number 1, and then Batman 1 through 15. So great 16 issue of Batman, written by Tom King, David Finch doing the artwork. It's and Michael Giannini. It also collects, I guess, I Am what is it? Volume 2. I Am Suicide. Of course, I'm looking at it right now. So check that out. It is 42% off, $20.29. I'd get through it eventually. Volume 3, I Am Bane, continues the Bane story. 42% off, $9.85. What else can you see here? Of course, the DC Meets Looney Tunes, including the wonderful story by Tom King and Lee Weeks that crosses Batman and Elmer Fudd, but you also get Martian Manhunter and Marvin the Martian, and Legion of Superheroes and Bugs Bunny. Very funny Sam Humphrey story. All these are terrific, really. Lobo and Roadrunner. It is 42% off, $11.59. You can get the complete Sheriff of Babylon story, Volume 1. This is the deluxe hardcover edition. $23.19, 42% off. That's your price. You can also get Batman Volume 5, Rules of Engagement, Rebirth. This includes the Joelle Jones art, as mentioned before, but pretty neat stuff. It is 42% off, $9.85. Check it out. It is all waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Lots more great deals waiting. If your orders are $50 or more, you'll receive free shipping. These are my friends. They have a great bookstore. You will find great prices at InStockTrades.com. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. Next week is San Diego Comic-Con, and as I said, lots of interesting Word Balloon conversations next week to accompany you if you're going to be at San Diego. It will give you more fodder for your travels to and from San Diego and the con. We've already given you about 5 hours of great conversation between Brian Bendis and Tom King in the last 7 days, but more to come. And be listening right here at wordballoon.com. Follow me on Twitter at JohnWordBalloon. You can follow me on Facebook under my name, John Suntress. And email me if you want, John at wordballoon.com. Thanks again for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2018.